A waitress takes her little daughter to work, but when the girl sees a millionaire customer, she shouts something unexpected. Everyone is stunned by what happens next. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Scarlett Carter hurried through the bustling kitchen of the Sunset Bistro, gripping a tray of water glasses and trying not to let her exhaustion show. The overhead lights buzzed softly, reflecting off the metallic surfaces of pots and pans. At 32 years old, she was determined never to let anyone see her falter, even though her feet ached from her double shift the previous evening. Behind her, the swinging door that led to the main dining room kept opening and closing, a steady reminder of the customers waiting to be served. She paused for a moment by the kitchen counter, taking a breath. Her eyes were a bright shade of green, though weariness had dimmed their usual sparkle. She wiped her hands on her apron and glanced at the clock on the far wall. It was just past noon, and the rush had begun. Lunch orders were pouring in, and she had to be at her best. Sabrina Collins, the head cook in her mid-40s, caught her eye from across the kitchen. "Take a second if you need it," Sabrina said gently, brushing back a few strands of her curly hair. "You've been racing around all morning." Scarlett shook her head with a small, polite smile. "I'll manage. I just didn't sleep well last night." She wasn't about to confide the full truth that she had spent half the night studying for her nursing classes, then woken up twice to comfort her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, who had dreamt about scary monsters. Her thoughts drifted briefly to Lily, who was safe at home under the care of a neighbor. A tightness formed in Scarlett's chest as she recalled how many nights she had come home after midnight to find Lily already asleep, only to leave again before dawn. Though she loved her daughter more than anything, the constant struggle to make ends meet wore her down. She glanced at the kitchen phone, half expecting a call about some new crisis. Thomas McKee, the restaurant manager, stepped in from the corridor. He was a tall man in his early 50s, with silver-grey hair and a perpetually worried expression. "Scarlett, table 6 needs water refills," he said in a rushed tone, his eyes scanning the busy kitchen. "And don't forget table 3 asked for a new basket of bread." "Yes, sir," Scarlett replied, grabbing the tray with glasses. She hurried through the swinging door and into the dining area, where sunlight streamed through large windows overlooking a stretch of palm trees. The Sunset Bistro catered to an upscale clientele, and she often felt out of place among the elegant decor and polished marble floors. Yet she had learned to blend in by adopting a courteous smile and a poised demeanor. Weaving around tables, she approached an older couple sipping iced tea. They looked up with polite smiles, and she offered a small nod in return. "Here's some fresh bread," Scarlett said quietly, placing the basket on their table. She topped off their water glasses, careful not to spill. As she moved away, she noticed a conversation between 2 businessmen at the next table, their voices rising in excitement about a tech deal. It reminded her of her college days, back when she had first met Lily's father, a foreign exchange student named Lorenzo who brimmed with ambition. The memory tugged at her heart, but she pushed it aside. There was no time to indulge in the past, not when she had customers to attend to. Across the room, she spotted Jeff Tucker, a friendly waiter in his late 20s, expertly balancing a tray of entrees. He caught her eye and grinned. "Long day," he mouthed silently. Scarlett gave him a shrug and an exaggerated sigh. It was a small moment of camaraderie that made the endless labor a bit more bearable. She adjusted the tray against her hip, made her way back to the kitchen, and deposited the used dishes at the sink. Sabrina handed her a plate of grilled salmon. "This is for table 10. And Scarlett, you really should think about taking a short break. "I will," Scarlett promised, though she knew she might not get the chance. Pulling a pencil from behind her ear, she quickly scribbled down an order on her notepad, wishing she had more time to breathe. Between the demands of work and her ongoing nursing studies, she often felt like she was caught in a whirlwind. Yet every time she thought about quitting, she reminded herself of Lily, whose bright smile and irrepressible curiosity made all the sacrifices worthwhile. Although fatigue tugged at her body, Scarlett clung to her hope for a better future. Approaching table 10, she smiled politely at the businesswoman waiting there. She set down the salmon dish with practiced ease, nodded to a request for extra napkins, and disappeared into the corridor leading back to the kitchen. As she did so, her cell phone buzzed in her apron pocket. With a quick glance around to ensure no one needed her immediate attention, she slipped into a corner and answered. A frown crossed her face when she heard her neighbor's hoarse voice on the other end of the line, mentioning she might have come down with a fever. Scarlett felt her stomach clench in sudden worry. She asked the neighbor if Lily was all right, and the neighbor quickly reassured her that the child was fine, for now. But Scarlett couldn't help the rising panic. If her neighbor got worse, who would watch Lily? She thanked the neighbor and hung up, pressing the phone against her chest. For one fleeting moment, she closed her eyes, anxiety swirling inside her. Then, taking a steadying breath, she stepped back into the bright dining room, resolute. There would be a way forward somehow. She just had to keep believing that. The following morning brought a fresh wave of desert sunshine streaming through Scarlett's thin curtains. She squinted at the alarm clock on her nightstand, realizing she had only slept a few short hours. A low groan escaped her lips as she pulled herself from the bed and padded across the worn carpet to check on Lily. When she entered her daughter's room, she found Lily awake, already sitting up on the small twin bed with a crayon in her hand. The 6-year-old had her light brown hair in 2 messy pigtails, bright eyes fixed on a coloring book spread across her lap. "Good morning, Mommy," Lily chirped. "I'm drawing a picture of us at the zoo." Scarlett forced a smile. "That's lovely, sweetheart," she said, running a hand over Lily's hair. "We'll find time to go someday, I promise." She tried not to think about how tight money was or how busy her schedule had become. For now, she needed to focus on the day ahead. In the cramped kitchen, Scarlett checked her phone. The neighbor, Mrs. Robinson, had left a voicemail earlier. Her fever wasn't improving, and she wasn't sure if she could look after Lily that afternoon. "Great," Scarlett muttered under her breath. She didn't blame Mrs. Robinson. No one wants to babysit while sick. But the timing was terrible. There was a high-profile lunch at the Sunset Bistro scheduled that day, and Thomas expected all hands on deck. Lily wandered into the kitchen, still holding her crayons. "Mommy, do I have to go to Mrs. Robinson's today?" she asked. "Her apartment smells like soup." Normally, Scarlett would have tried to joke back with Lily, but her mind was spinning with worry. She had no family in Phoenix, no other friends who could drop everything to babysit. The thought of missing work made her stomach churn. The manager had made it clear that repeated absences wouldn't be tolerated. She paced between the outdated fridge and the small dining table. Could she bring Lily to the restaurant? It was against policy. But maybe she could keep her in the break room for a few hours. At least that would be safer than leaving her with a sick neighbor. Reluctantly, Scarlett dialed the restaurant's number, bracing herself for Thomas's reaction. His voice sounded brisk on the other end. "Thomas McKee speaking. Is that you, Scarlett?" "Yes, I have a problem," she began, trying to keep her voice steady. "My neighbor is sick, and there's no one to watch Lily. Could I, just this once, bring her to the bistro? She'll stay in the back. She won't bother anyone." Thomas paused, and Scarlett could almost picture him rubbing his temples in frustration. "Scarlett, we have a strict policy. It's a busy day, and we're expecting a very important client." I know, Thomas, she interrupted, but I'm desperate. Lily is 6. She can play quietly or color. Please. I'll keep her out of sight. Another pause, then a resigned sigh. All right, he said at last, but just this once. And if she causes any trouble, we're going to have to revisit this arrangement. Scarlett thanked him profusely and hung up, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She turned to Lily with a slightly forced grin. Guess who's coming to Mommy's work today? Lily's face lit up. Yay! I get to see where all the fancy food is. Scarlett tried not to dwell on the uneasy feeling in her stomach. She spent the next hour packing Lily's favorite coloring books, a small plush bunny, and some snacks. Then they headed out, walking under the harsh Arizona sun toward the bus stop. At the restaurant, Thomas greeted them with a curt nod, directing Scarlett to keep Lily in the small staff lounge near the kitchen. You let me know the minute anything goes wrong, he warned, then turned to deal with the frantic preparations. Lily gazed around, her eyes shining with curiosity. Rows of freshly polished silverware glimmered in the distance, and a soft hum of conversation drifted from the dining area. This place is huge, she whispered, as Scarlett led her past the bustle of cooks and servers. Scarlett helped Lily settle onto an old couch in the corner of the lounge. Stay here, honey, and please don't wander around, she insisted. Mommy has a lot of tables today. Lily nodded dutifully, though her gaze kept flicking toward the door. With a final kiss on her daughter's forehead, Scarlett hurried off to change into her work uniform. She felt relieved to have found a temporary solution, yet a nagging thought lingered. What if Lily got bored and wandered outside the lounge? She tried to shake the feeling off as she entered the kitchen. Sabrina was already there, prepping dishes. Morning, Scarlett, she said gently, noticing Lily's small form in the lounge. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on her too. Scarlett gave a grateful smile. Thank you, Sabrina. I'll try to get through today without any drama. But as she grabbed her notepad and readied herself for the lunch rush, she couldn't ignore the prickling sense that fate had something unexpected in store. The lunch crowd hit with the force of a flash flood. By noon, every table in the Sunset Bistro was occupied, from the elegantly dressed socialites near the windows to the business executives huddled in the corner booths. Scarlett moved among them, balancing trays of drinks and plates of grilled salmon, her expression calm despite the tension building in her shoulders. Behind her professional smile, she felt the weight of her decision to bring Lily to work. Every so often, Scarlett glanced toward the corridor that led back to the staff lounge, her heart pounding at the thought that Lily might wander out at any moment. She recalled the manager's warning and tried to steady her nerves. At table 7, a stern-faced older man cleared his throat. Miss, could you bring more lemon slices and perhaps another bread basket? Scarlett nodded politely. Certainly, sir. I'll be right back. She retreated to the kitchen, placing the order for more bread. Sabrina looked up from her station where she was chopping fresh herbs. How's Lily? She asked in a low voice. I saw her playing quietly a few minutes ago. Good, Scarlett said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She seems to be obeying the rules. She let out a small sigh. But I keep worrying. What if she gets bored? Sabrina offered a sympathetic smile. Kids always do, but she seems like a smart, well-behaved girl. She'll be fine. Besides, you got me and Jeff looking out for her too. Scarlett was about to reply when Thomas appeared, wearing his usual tense expression. Scarlett, he said, fiddling with a stack of receipts. We just got word that Lorenzo Rivera will be here soon. He's booked a table near the center. Make sure everything's perfect. She nodded, not recognizing the name at first. Of course. Is he some kind of celebrity? Thomas eyed her as though she should know. Tech entrepreneur, millionaire, the sort of person who expects impeccable service. I want everyone on their toes. Scarlett watched him walk off, feeling a slight jolt of adrenaline. High-profile clients meant the potential for big tips, but also bigger scrutiny. She took a moment to straighten her apron, then headed back out to deliver the bread and lemon slices. Her mind kept drifting to Lily, tucked away in the lounge. On one hand, Scarlett felt relieved her daughter was safe close by. On the other, she feared Lily might inadvertently cause trouble. The manager had made it clear no disruptions would be tolerated. Around 12:30, a wave of hushed excitement spread through the dining room. Scarlett craned her neck to see what was happening. A tall man with impeccably styled black hair and striking blue eyes entered, accompanied by two associates dressed in sharp suits. He had the sort of quiet confidence that made people part ways without him even asking. She realized this must be Lorenzo Rivera. Unsure why, she felt a strange flutter of nerves. Perhaps it was the collective energy of the staff, all vying to impress this important figure. She watched him briefly before refocusing on her own tables. There was no time to get distracted. As she cleared empty dishes from table 5, Jeff sidled up beside her. "Did you see him?" he whispered conspiratorially. "That's Lorenzo Rivera. He owns a bunch of startups in the tech world. Rumor says he might invest in local businesses here in Phoenix." Scarlett forced a polite smile. "Let's just hope he's a generous tipper," she said, trying to sound light-hearted. The last thing she needed was more drama, yet even as she said it, a nagging sense of unease tugged at her. She'd heard stories from other waitresses about wealthy patrons who made outlandish requests or demanded personal attention. The thought of losing her job because of one misstep made her anxious. She retreated to the kitchen to pick up another order and found herself peeking into the staff lounge. Lily was still there, seated on the old couch, crayons scattered around her. Her face lit up when she saw her mum. "Mommy, can I come out for just a little while?" Lily whispered. "I want to see what the dining room looks like." Scarlett's heart clenched. She remembered being a curious child herself, but she shook her head firmly. "Sweetheart, you have to stay here. It's too busy out there, and people don't like children running around while they eat." Lily looked disappointed, but she nodded. "Okay, I'll keep drawing." Scarlett gave her a quick hug. "I promise. We'll do something fun when I'm done." "Just hang in there, all right?" Stepping back into the kitchen, she tried to dispel the image of Lily's sad eyes. She knew she'd done the right thing, yet something about the day felt off balance. Maybe it was the looming presence of this millionaire client, or the unspoken tension of pushing the restaurant's rules by having Lily on the premises. Either way, she felt as though she were teetering on a very thin line, one misstep away from an embarrassing fall. She gripped the handles of a serving tray and told herself to focus. She had to make it through the next few hours without incident. Everything else would have to wait. The clinking of silverware and the low hum of polite conversation filled the Sunset Bistro as the afternoon wore on. Scarlett found herself assigned to Lorenzo Rivera's table, and the sheer weight of the responsibility made her palms sweat. She carefully approached him, pen and notepad ready. "Good afternoon, sir," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Welcome to the Sunset Bistro. May I start you off with something to drink?" Lorenzo looked up, and for a brief second, his striking blue eyes met her gaze. He appeared to be in his late 30s, tall and athletic. There was a subtle warmth in his expression that contradicted the usual image of a cold, calculating millionaire. "Yes, I'll have a sparkling water," he said in a calm tone. "And my associates will each have your house specialty cocktail, if it's available this early." His associates nodded, smiling in agreement. Scarlett jotted down the order. Right away, she hurried off to the bar, aware that a half-dozen other tables also needed attention. Her mind raced. It was crucial to remain polite yet swift, especially with such an important guest. Behind the bar, she bumped into Jeff, who was fetching a tray of glasses. He raised an eyebrow, a teasing grin on his face. "So, you're the lucky one who gets to handle Mr. Big Shot." She forced a light laugh. "Lucky me. Just hope I don't mess it up." Jeff shook his head. "You'll do fine. He seems nice enough." When she returned to Lorenzo's table with the drinks, his conversation had turned to a discussion about expanding a tech platform. Though it wasn't her place to listen, she couldn't help catching snippets of their plans for bringing more IT jobs to Phoenix. Something about his voice made her pause. He sounded genuinely invested in the city's community, not just in profit. As she set down the sparkling water, Lorenzo offered a quick, gracious "thank you." She smiled and stepped back, letting him continue. Across the room, Thomas gave her a pointed look, as if to remind her this was a make-or-break moment for her career. She let out a silent breath and moved on to deliver orders at other tables. In the staff lounge, Lily grew restless. She had colored 4 pages in her book and now gazed at the corridor leading to the dining area. She remembered her mother's warning, but curiosity gnawed at her. Slowly, she tiptoed closer to the door, determined to catch a peek of the elegant restaurant she had only heard so much about. Meanwhile, Scarlett balanced a tray of appetizers for Lorenzo's table. She laid out a small selection of bruschetta, caprese skewers, and stuffed mushrooms. Lorenzo paused his conversation and sampled one of the mushrooms with interest. "This is quite good," he remarked, his voice quiet yet sincere. "Please give my compliments to the chef." A gentle flush of pride warmed Scarlett's cheeks. "I'll be sure to let our head cook know." She was about to step away when Lily, unnoticed by anyone, crept into the fringes of the dining room. The little girl's eyes widened at the sight of well-dressed patrons and sparkling cutlery. She spotted her mother talking to a tall man at a prominent table. Despite her mother's instructions, Lily inched closer, her gaze flicking between Scarlett and the man she was serving. Scarlett sensed a disturbance and turned, her heart jolting when she saw Lily standing by the edge of the room. Quickly, she excused herself from Lorenzo's table and rushed toward her daughter, gently taking her by the shoulders. "Lily, I told you to stay in the lounge," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "Come on, honey, you can't be out here." Lily looked up, her eyes filling with guilt. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I just wanted to see you." Scarlett's chest tightened. She glanced over her shoulder, noticing Thomas glaring at them from across the restaurant. Other patrons were also casting curious glances. She prayed that Lorenzo wouldn't be annoyed by the interruption. Trying to remain calm, she ushered Lily back through the kitchen door. "Stay with Sabrina," Scarlett insisted, guiding her daughter toward the cook. Sabrina shot Scarlett a concerned look, but nodded, gesturing for Lily to sit on a stool by the counter. Scarlett exhaled and re-entered the dining area, feeling the weight of multiple stares. She forced a steady count in her head. 1, 2, 3. Then she approached Lorenzo's table again, apology ready on her lips. "Everything all right?" Lorenzo asked, his tone polite but curious. His associates continued chatting, not paying much attention. "Yes," Scarlett replied, managing a small smile. "Just a little issue in the back." He gave a short nod, accepting her answer without prying. She served their entrees. Seared scallops for Lorenzo, grilled chicken for one associate, and a pasta dish for the other, and tried to focus on being gracious. Inside, her thoughts churned. She dreaded a confrontation with Thomas, worried he might send her home or even fire her if Lily disrupted the dining area again. As she moved away from Lorenzo's table, Sabrina caught her eye from the kitchen doorway, giving her a sympathetic thumbs up. Scarlett clung to that small gesture, grateful not to be entirely alone in this. Scarlett retreated to the back storage room near the walk-in freezer, trying to catch her breath. Her mind spun with concern for Lily and the fear of angering Thomas. She looked around at the crates of produce stacked high against the walls and felt a wave of helplessness wash over her. She knew she couldn't maintain this delicate balance forever. A gentle knock on the door startled her. She turned to see Sabrina stepping inside, wiping her hands on her apron. "Thomas is busy speaking with a customer. I thought you might need a moment." Scarlett nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Thanks, I feel like I'm walking on a razor's edge." Sabrina's brow furrowed with concern. "You're doing the best you can. Jeff and I will help keep Lily occupied." Scarlett gave her a grateful smile. "I appreciate it. She's not a troublemaker. She's just curious." Sabrina patted her shoulder gently. "I know. Listen, get back out there. Finish your tables. I'll see what I can do to entertain Lily. We'll figure it out." Taking a deep breath, Scarlett walked back into the kitchen. She straightened her apron, steeled herself, and returned to the dining room. The hum of conversation continued, a mixture of clinking glasses and hushed chatter. While serving coffee refills, she caught a glimpse of Lorenzo again. He was in a spirited conversation with his associates, but occasionally his gaze swept the restaurant, as though searching for something. Their eyes met briefly before she moved on. Thomas, spotting Scarlett, motioned for her to come over. She braced herself, expecting a reprimand. Instead, he whispered in a tight voice, "Keep the child out of sight, Scarlett. If Mr. Rivera complains, I'll have no choice but to let you go." "I understand," she replied, forcing composure into her voice. "There won't be any more disturbances." Thomas nodded curtly, looking as though he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Scarlett saw compassion flicker in his eyes for a split second before he turned to address another staff member. Moments later, she was clearing plates from Lorenzo's table. She overheard part of their conversation, something about an upcoming partnership with a local university. It brought back memories of her own college days, how she had once hoped to earn a nursing degree in a straightforward manner, rather than juggling classes at night. She felt a pang of regret and forced herself to concentrate on the tasks at hand. In the kitchen, Sabrina had placed Lily on a stool by the counter, encouraging her to draw pictures of flowers and animals. Lily giggled occasionally, amused by Sabrina's animated instructions. Jeff joined them during his brief lull, showing Lily how to fold napkins into funny shapes. The child's laughter punctuated the usual kitchen clatter, a bright reminder of innocence in a place so focused on adult demands. Scarlett glimpsed this scene as she passed by, a surge of relief flooding her. She mouthed, "Thank you," to both Sabrina and Jeff, feeling a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, the day would end without major disaster. But that sense of relief lasted only a short while. Around mid-afternoon, the staff hurried to accommodate a sudden spike in dessert orders. Scarlett was carrying a tray of crème brûlée when a busboy bumped into her, sending a spoon clattering to the floor. She managed to save the desserts from spilling, but the clang echoed throughout the dining room. Flustered, Scarlett stooped to pick up the spoon and locked eyes with Lorenzo, who seemed momentarily curious about the commotion. She stood quickly and continued her route, cheeks burning with embarrassment. Her entire body hummed with tension. She thought again of Lily and how precarious this situation was. It wasn't just about losing her job. It was about failing to secure the future she'd been working toward so tirelessly. And yet, she sensed an undercurrent of something more. She felt an inexplicable charge in the air, as though the very presence of this mysterious millionaire might stir up old memories or reveal new complications she couldn't yet imagine. By the time she returned to the kitchen, Thomas was there, checking stock with a clipboard in his hands. He looked up, his expression stern. "Scarlett, I need you to hold it together out there," he said in a low tone. "I'm counting on you not to make any more mistakes." She nodded, her throat tightening. "I'm trying, Thomas. I promise." The manager sighed. Mr. Rivera is set to stay for a business meeting here later. Just do your part, and maybe we'll get a big tip. We could use more positive publicity." Scarlett forced a smile, though anxiety rattled her inside. The day was far from over, and she had a growing sense that the tightrope she walked was about to become even more treacherous. As she readied yet another tray, her thoughts drifted to Lily. She pictured her daughter's face, the small hands diligently coloring pages, blissfully unaware of the adult drama unfolding around her. Scarlett found a faint spark of determination. She refused to let the day's pressures break her. She had faced worse in her life, like discovering she was pregnant and completely alone, and she had survived those hardships. Though fear still gnawed at her, Scarlett stepped back into the dining room, carrying the tray with renewed resolve. She had made a tentative choice to keep going, one foot in front of the other, even if she wasn't sure where it would lead. Back in the bustling kitchen, Scarlett felt her pulse slow slightly as she placed empty plates and glasses onto a counter for the dishwashers. The lunch rush had eased, but an uneasy tension still lingered. Between worrying about Lily's well-being and trying to make a good impression on Lorenzo Rivera, Scarlett was teetering on the edge of burnout. She glanced at her phone, hoping for an update from her neighbor, but found no new messages. Sabrina Collins, the head cook, was chopping fresh cilantro when she noticed Scarlett's drawn face. Setting down her knife, she waved Scarlett over. "You're about to drop," Sabrina said gently. "Here, let me fix you something to eat. You need more than just coffee to keep going." Scarlett mustered a tired laugh. "I guess you're right. I've been running on fumes all day." Sabrina took a slice of bread and spooned a bit of avocado spread on top, then handed it to Scarlett. "Eat and try to breathe for a second." Her tone was kind, but carried an air of authority. At 45, Sabrina possessed a calm self-assurance that Scarlett found comforting. Scarlett sank onto a nearby stool, chewing the bread as she let her shoulders slump. "Thank you." Sabrina leaned in, her voice low enough so the other kitchen staff wouldn't overhear. "I've been watching you juggle so many things these last few months. Your classes, your shifts, and being a mom. You remind me of myself years ago." Scarlett swallowed hard. "You were on your own, too." Nodding, Sabrina's features softened with empathy. "Raising 2 kids after my ex walked out. I worked late nights in a diner, then moved up to a bigger restaurant. It was never easy, but I got through it, and so can you." Scarlett sighed, thinking of Lily in the lounge. "I just hate bringing her here. It feels wrong, but I didn't have a choice. And Thomas is livid." "He's not thrilled, sure," Sabrina said, "but he also knows you're one of the best servers we have. Sometimes we're all forced to make choices that aren't ideal." She paused, carefully studying Scarlett's face. "If you ever need help, financially, or even just someone to watch Lily for an hour, don't be too proud to ask. We all need a hand once in a while." Scarlett opened her mouth to reply, but emotion clogged her throat. She blinked back sudden tears, touched by Sabrina's kindness. I don't know what to say," she managed, her voice trembling. "Just say yes when you need it." Sabrina patted her hand. "Now, eat up. Then take a minute to check on your little girl." Scarlett nodded, finishing the bread quickly. She hopped off the stool and thanked Sabrina with a faint smile. "I appreciate you more than you know," she whispered, wiping the corner of her eye with the back of her hand. A few minutes later, she slipped into the staff lounge, bracing herself for Lily's inevitable complaint about being stuck inside. She found her daughter curled up on the battered couch, giggling with Jeff as he showed her a silly trick, balancing a salt shaker on its edge. Lily's crayons and coloring book were strewn across a small coffee table. "Mommy!" Lily beamed, leaping up. "Jeff taught me how to do a magic trick." Jeff held his hands up in mock innocence. "I promise I didn't teach her anything too wild." Scarlett ruffled Lily's hair, her heart warming at the sight of her daughter's grin. "Thank you for keeping her entertained," she said, turning to Jeff. "I owe you." He waved off the gratitude. "Just doing my part. Figured if she's happy, you can focus on those fancy clients without worrying." Lily tugged at Scarlett's apron. "Mommy, are you okay? You look tired." Scarlett knelt down to Lily's eye level. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just busy. But I'm glad you're having fun." With a quick glance at Jeff, she added in a hushed tone, "Sabrina offered to help me out if I need it. She's sort of become my mentor, I guess." Jeff nodded. "She's amazing. She's been here for ages, seen it all. If she's in your corner, that's a good sign." Scarlett checked the time on the lounge's tiny wall clock. The midday crowd was dwindling, but Lorenzo and his associates were still out there, likely expecting top-notch service until they chose to leave. Before returning to work, she looked at Lily. "Sweetie, I really need you to stay here. No peeking into the dining area. Promise." Lily's eyes flickered with mischief, but she nodded. "I promise." Scarlett gave her a quick kiss on the forehead. "Good girl. I'll come check on you soon." She hurried out and nearly collided with Thomas in the hallway. He lifted an eyebrow, scanning her face. "You all right?" he asked, sounding more stressed than concerned. Scarlett forced a polite nod. "Yes, I'm fine. I was just... Mr. Rivera wants to settle his tab soon, then hold a short meeting here. Make sure everything he needs is ready." Thomas strode away before Scarlett could answer. She exhaled, feeling a shiver of nerves at the mention of Lorenzo's name. From the corner of her eye, she noticed Sabrina watching her from the kitchen station, giving an encouraging nod. For a moment, Scarlett allowed herself to feel a glimmer of reassurance. There was a comforting weight in knowing someone understood her struggles, someone who had walked a similar path. She thought back to Sabrina's gentle words. "We all need a hand once in a while." It felt like the first time in ages Scarlett didn't feel completely alone. She straightened her shoulders and stepped into the dining room. If this day had taught her anything, it was that leaning on the right people didn't mean she was weak. Maybe, just maybe, it could give her the strength she needed. Lorenzo Rivera's lunch meeting seemed to stretch on far longer than Scarlett had anticipated. By late afternoon, most patrons had either paid and left or were finishing dessert. But Lorenzo still occupied the center table, his associates huddled close. Papers were spread across the tabletop, and an air of hushed urgency emanated from their corner. Scarlett refilled their glasses with water, careful not to disrupt the serious mood. She noticed that Lorenzo, despite being engrossed in conversation, occasionally glanced at her with a curious expression. It made her skin prickle with self-consciousness, though she couldn't quite pinpoint why. She set the pitcher down gently. "Is there anything else I can bring you?" she asked, voice measured. Lorenzo nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, could we see a dessert menu?" Of course. She handed over the slim, leather-bound dessert list and stepped away, aware of Thomas hovering in the background. When she reached the kitchen, she found Sabrina waiting by the dessert station, carefully torching the sugar on several crème brûlée. "He's still here, huh?" Sabrina remarked, glancing into the dining room. "Must be a big deal." Scarlett nodded, taking a breath. "He's definitely thorough." "I've never seen a meeting last this long," Sabrina chuckled. "Millionaire business types don't watch the clock the same way we do." She finished her task and slid the crème brûlées onto a tray. "I'll have Jeff run these to table 5. Why don't you take 5 minutes and check on Lily?" "Thanks," Scarlett said gratefully, untying her apron. She hurried to the staff lounge, half expecting Lily to be climbing the walls out of boredom. Instead, she found her daughter quietly flipping through an illustrated book about desert wildlife. Jeff sat nearby, scrolling on his phone. He looked up as Scarlett entered. "She's been good as gold," he said with a grin. Lily turned the page of her book. "Did you know desert tortoises can live a really long time?" she asked, eyes brimming with excitement. "That's amazing," Scarlett replied, sitting next to her. She smoothed Lily's hair gently, relieved to see her daughter so calm. "We should visit a wildlife reserve someday." Lily's face brightened. "Yes, please." Jeff stood, stretching his arms. "I can cover your tables for a few minutes if you need a short break," he offered. "Sabrina's finishing up the desserts." Scarlett hesitated, but the lingering fatigue pulled her in. "You sure?" He nodded. "Absolutely." The staff lounge quieted as he left. Scarlett felt a weight lifting, albeit briefly, and decided to savor a moment with Lily. She listened as her daughter babbled about the pictures in the book, describing everything in wide-eyed wonder. While Lily chattered away, Scarlett remembered the conversation she'd had earlier with Sabrina. It was rare for someone to offer real help, no strings attached. Her life had been a series of uphill battles since Lily was born, and she rarely allowed herself to depend on anyone. But Sabrina's words had sparked a small, comforting flame of hope. Maybe relying on others wasn't a weakness. Maybe it was part of being human. Just as she contemplated stepping back out to the dining room, Thomas's voice cut through the air. "Scarlett!" he called from somewhere in the corridor. She stood, a ripple of anxiety tightening her chest. "I'm here," she called back, ushering Lily to stay put. "I'll be right outside, honey." Thomas appeared in the doorway, eyes darting between Scarlett and Lily. "Mr. Rivera wants the check. Jeff just told me he's ready to wrap things up." Scarlett nodded, retying her apron. "I'll take care of it." She made her way to the main room, weaving between tables until she reached Lorenzo's. He looked up, that curious expression returning to his face. Without waiting for him to speak, she presented the black leather check holder. "Whenever you're ready," she said politely. He thanked her, and after a final word with his associates, he slid his credit card inside. Scarlett picked it up, heading toward the register at the bar. While processing his payment, she couldn't help noticing the name embossed on the card in elegant lettering, L. Rivera. Something about it felt so distant from her own world, like a name belonging to a universe she'd never inhabit. Returning, she placed the receipt before him, along with a pen. "Please sign at your convenience," she murmured. He penned his name, then paused, eyes drifting up. "I appreciate your service today," he said quietly, his tone sincere. "I know it's been a long afternoon." Scarlett's cheeks warmed. "We're glad to have you here. Let us know if you need anything else." She discreetly collected the signed slip and moved away. Yet as she walked back toward the bar, she had the strange sense that Lorenzo was still watching her, as though trying to piece together a puzzle. She forced herself not to look over her shoulder, even though curiosity gnawed at her. Once he and his associates finally stood to leave, Scarlett breathed a sigh of relief. She glanced at the tip line on the receipt. Generous, indeed. Thomas would be pleased. More importantly, it meant she could cover a few unexpected bills this month. While cleaning up after their meeting, Scarlett noticed a small card left behind, likely one of Lorenzo's business cards. She picked it up carefully, reading the sleek print. Lorenzo Rivera, CEO, Rivera Innovations. There was a phone number and an email address below. She slipped it into her apron pocket, intending to give it to Thomas, but a part of her hesitated. Her routine at the Sunset Bistro had always been about blending into the background, working hard without stirring the waters. But today felt different. She had allowed Lily into a place that was supposed to be strictly professional, accepted more help from co-workers, and found herself oddly fascinated by a man whose world was so far removed from her own. As she walked to the kitchen to wash up, she realized she was stepping out of her usual rhythm, breaking from the routine that had once been her sole source of stability. And she couldn't deny a tiny thrill fluttering somewhere deep inside her. Late that afternoon, once Lorenzo and his associates departed, the Sunset Bistro felt quieter, almost subdued. Scarlett's shift was finally winding down, and she headed to the staff lounge to retrieve Lily. She found her daughter napping lightly, crayons scattered around her. With great care, Scarlett scooped Lily into her arms. Lily stirred, blinking groggily. "Is it time to go home?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Scarlett smiled softly. "Yes, sweetie, the busy day's over." Walking out of the lounge, she caught Thomas's eye. The manager gave a small, tight nod, his version of approving her to leave. Scarlett set Lily down momentarily to clock out at the front desk, where a few other employees lingered. She noticed the hush in their voices, the way they cast furtive glances at her. Word had probably spread about Lily's presence, and she could only hope no one else would make a fuss. Sabrina stepped up, handing Scarlett a small to-go box. "A little dinner for you and Lily," she said with a warm smile. "Leftovers from today's special." Touched by the gesture, Scarlett murmured her thanks. She crouched beside Lily, helping the girl slip into a light jacket despite the lingering Arizona heat. The sun was still high enough to cast a warm glow across the pavement outside. By the time they made it onto the sidewalk, Lily's hand in hers, Scarlett felt the day's tension gradually lift. She glanced at the to-go box Sabrina had given her, thinking about how she'd rarely received kindness like that in her life. Maybe things were changing for the better, though the prospect of what might come next both excited and unnerved her. On the bus ride home, Lily cuddled close, drifting in and out of a light doze. Scarlett gazed at the city lights through the window, recalling the fleeting moment when she'd held Lorenzo's business card. She wondered if she should have given it straight to Thomas, or if it was worth hanging on to. The thought felt surreal. Why would she ever need to contact a wealthy tech mogul? Yet the memory of his polite demeanor and the curious looks he'd given her lingered like a faint echo. She scolded herself for letting such thoughts preoccupy her. Her world revolved around finishing nursing school, paying rent, and giving Lily a decent childhood. Fantasizing about some intersection with Lorenzo Rivera's life made no sense. After stepping off the bus, she and Lily trudged up the worn stairs to their apartment. The place was small, a bit cramped, with peeling paint in the hallway, but it was home. Scarlett flicked on a light, revealing a modest living room with a threadbare couch and a coffee table piled high with textbooks and Lily's toys. While Lily retreated to her bedroom to change into pajamas, Scarlett opened the to-go box. Steam rose from a portion of baked chicken and roasted vegetables. She caught the savory aroma and felt a pang of gratitude for Sabrina's support. Lily reappeared, yawning. "Can we watch a movie before bed?" "Just a short one," Scarlett replied, plating the food. "Then you go straight to sleep, okay?" Lily nodded. "Deal." They ate together on the couch, Lily nibbling while occasionally rubbing her eyes. Halfway through a cartoon, the girl fell asleep, her small head lolling to one side. Scarlett turned off the TV and gently lifted her daughter, carrying her to the bedroom. Lily stirred slightly, but snuggled into her pillow with a soft sigh. Scarlett tiptoed out, returning to the living room. A wave of exhaustion hit. She considered going to bed early, but remembered she had a set of nursing lecture notes to review. Sitting at the coffee table, she flipped through her textbooks, mentally rehearsing medical terminology, but her mind wandered. She thought about the odd sense of stepping into a new world. First, she had broken restaurant policy by bringing Lily, forcing herself out of her usual safety zone. Then, she had interacted with a man whose presence felt strangely significant. In a single day, Her tightly controlled routine had cracked open, revealing possibilities, both daunting and intriguing. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe it was just another busy shift with a demanding client. Still, she couldn't ignore the sense that the foundation of her life had shifted ever so slightly. Cross-referencing her notes about human anatomy, she forced her attention back to her studies. She needed to pass her exams, find a better job in healthcare, and secure a stable future for Lily. That was the plan. She had no room for distractions. Yet, as she closed the textbook and finally headed to her own bed, a whisper of excitement refused to fade. She might be stepping into unfamiliar territory, but something within her, an ember of courage she barely recognized, suggested that maybe it was time. Maybe her life was meant to change in ways she couldn't yet define. The next morning arrived with a pastel sunrise streaking across Phoenix's skyline. Scarlett woke earlier than usual, determined to get Lily ready and head to her nursing lab session before returning to another shift at the bistro. She tiptoed into the kitchen, brewing a quick cup of coffee and checking her phone. To her relief, Mrs. Robinson had left a message saying she felt better and could watch Lily if needed. Grateful for the reprieve, Scarlett quietly roused her daughter. "Time to get up, honey," she whispered, gently shaking Lily's shoulder. Lily sat up, blinking sleep from her eyes. "Do I have to go back to your work?" she asked, a hint of grogginess in her voice. "No, Mrs. Robinson is feeling better," Scarlett said, smiling. "You'll be staying with her while I go to class." Lily brightened, clearly relieved. She stretched her arms overhead. "Okay. Then we can hang out later." "That's the plan." Scarlett dressed quickly in jeans and a simple blouse, then prepared Lily's breakfast. After a quick bite, they walked 2 doors down the hall, where Mrs. Robinson greeted them wearing a cozy sweater and offering a weak but genuine smile. "Thank you again," Scarlett told her, feeling slightly guilty for imposing. Mrs. Robinson waved off the concern. "I'm much better now. You go on to your class." "Lily and I will bake muffins." Lily's eyes lit up. "Chocolate chip." With a laugh, Mrs. Robinson nodded. "We'll see what we can manage." Scarlett hugged her daughter goodbye and rushed out, jogging to catch the next bus. As she navigated the winding streets, she mentally shifted her focus to the day's upcoming lab on pediatric nursing, a field she felt drawn to, given her own experience raising Lily. Arriving at the college campus, she hurried down the corridors to her lab classroom. A few fellow students greeted her with friendly nods. Most were younger, fresh out of high school, but Scarlett was used to being one of the older students in the program. She slipped into her seat just as the instructor began discussing vital signs in children. For a while, she managed to immerse herself in the lesson, jotting down notes with fierce concentration. The discussion of pediatric care reminded her of Lily's doctor visits, how different the world of medicine felt when you had a personal stake in a young patient's well-being. She couldn't wait to become a fully qualified nurse and make a real difference. During a brief break, her classmate, Grace, an affable woman in her late 20s, leaned over. "Hey, you look more tired than usual. Everything okay?" Scarlett forced a small smile. "Just balancing work and single parenting." "Same old story." Grace offered a sympathetic glance. "I hear you. It's not easy, but you're almost there. We'll be graduating before you know it." The reminder of her looming graduation filled Scarlett with a mixture of excitement and dread. She still had to pass all her exams, secure a proper internship, and figure out how to juggle everything, but she nodded, letting hope flare for a moment. Once the lab wrapped up, Scarlett felt the usual tug of conflicting responsibilities. She needed to get to the Sunset Bistro soon, but she also had a paper due in a week and a load of reading to finish. Stepping outside into the bright Arizona sun, she weighed her options. With no time to waste, she hopped on a bus back to her neighborhood. She paused briefly at home to change into her waitress uniform, black pants and a crisp white shirt, then dashed to Mrs. Robinson's to check on Lily. She found Lily busying herself with colouring, chocolate smudges on her cheeks from the promised muffins. "Have fun, sweet girl," Scarlett said, pressing a gentle kiss to Lily's forehead. "I'll see you tonight." "Bye, Mummy." Lily waved cheerily. As Scarlett headed for the bistro, she couldn't help a sense of déjà vu from yesterday's ordeal. But there was a subtle difference in the air. She felt as if each step carried her deeper into an unfamiliar path. Whether it was the new dynamic with her co-workers, particularly Sabrina, or the haunting curiosity around Lorenzo Rivera's appearance, something had shifted. The bistro was moderately busy when she arrived. Jeff gave her a quick nod in greeting, while Sabrina simply offered an encouraging wave from behind the steaming pots. Scarlett jumped straight into her tasks, delivering menus, answering questions, fetching water. Before, her daily routine had been about predictable patterns. Now, she sensed a strange undercurrent of change, as though she were learning a new dance. She worked with a heightened awareness of everything around her, Thomas's watchful eye, Sabrina's reassuring presence, Jeff's friendly support. And lurking at the back of her mind was an unspoken thought. Would Lorenzo Rivera ever return to the restaurant? Part of her hoped never to see him again, worried about the tension he brought. But another part, smaller yet persistent, felt an odd spark of intrigue. Scarlett shook off the thought, refocusing on the customer in front of her who was asking about gluten-free options. She reminded herself that daydreaming about crossing paths with a tech millionaire did little to pay the bills. For now, she'd focus on her job, her studies, and her daughter. She had enough on her plate without adding lofty possibilities to the mix. Around midday, Scarlett found herself in the corridor that led to the staff lounge, scanning the lunch orders on her notepad. The bistro was humming with activity, yet not nearly as chaotic as the previous day. She felt grateful for the slight lull. She turned a corner and almost bumped into Sabrina, who was carrying a bowl of salad greens toward the kitchen. "Whoa there," Sabrina teased, stepping aside. "You look lost in thought." Scarlett laughed ruefully. "Just thinking about my classes, the next round of exams coming up, and how I need to somehow find an extra 10 hours in my week." Sabrina set down the bowl on a metal prep table and folded her arms. "I meant what I said yesterday. If you ever need help, whether it's with Lily or even some time to study here in the back, just let me know." Touched by the reminder, Scarlett felt a small warmth bloom in her chest. "Thank you. I might take you up on that, especially when finals roll around." Sabrina gave a decisive nod. "Good. We're a team here, no matter what Thomas might say." "Speaking of Thomas, watch your step around him. He's in a sour mood today, probably because some big group reservation cancelled last minute." Scarlett nodded in understanding. "I'll be careful." She moved on, delivering plates of fresh pasta and salads to various tables, refilling drinks and clearing empty dishes. The steady rhythm of work kept her hands busy, but her mind occasionally drifted to thoughts of Lily and her own future. By late afternoon, the restaurant calmed, giving Scarlett a chance to gather silverware at the back station. Jeff appeared beside her, sorting knives. "How's your day going?" he asked, glancing at her tired expression. "Better than yesterday," she admitted. "At least I'm not worried about Lily wandering into the dining room." He laughed lightly. "Yeah, she kept me entertained, though. Smart kid." Scarlett beamed with maternal pride. "She is. Sometimes too curious for her own good, but I guess that's how 6-year-olds are." They worked quietly for a minute, the soft clink of cutlery piling into bins filling the air. Then Jeff broke the silence. "I've been meaning to ask, are you ever scared you won't finish nursing school, that it'll be too much?" She looked at him, surprised by his directness. I worry about that all the time, she admitted, but I've come too far to quit. I just need to hang in there until graduation. Jeff's expression turned thoughtful. My mum was a nurse. She said it was tough, but it was the best thing she ever did. Helps a lot of people, you know? Scarlett felt a surge of determination. That's the plan, help others, especially families who can't afford good health care. I don't want to be stuck waitressing forever, no offense to the job. He shrugged, a friendly smile on his lips. No offense taken. I'm studying culinary arts, so I get it. This gig is just a stepping stone, right? Exactly. Just then, Thomas poked his head around the corner. Either of you have a moment to restock the coffee station? He asked, his tone clipped. We're running low on filters and cups again. Jeff raised a hand. I'll do it. He shot Scarlett a grin. That'll earn me some brownie points with the boss. Thomas gave a curt nod and disappeared. Jeff followed, leaving Scarlett alone for a moment. She leaned against the wall, feeling a strange sense of relief at having people around her who understood the grind. Sabrina, Jeff, both were turning out to be more than co-workers. In a life where she often felt she had to stand alone, their camaraderie was a welcome change. As she headed back into the dining room to check on a new table, Scarlett realized that her interactions with Sabrina and Jeff had become something like lifelines. They represented a support system she had never truly had before. It wasn't just about covering each other's shifts or exchanging friendly banter. It was about believing in each other's dreams, whether that meant culinary school, nursing, or simply surviving as a single parent. She returned to the hostess stand, where she found a mother and her teenage son waiting to be seated. Guiding them to a booth, Scarlett smiled, recalling how Lily might look in another decade. As she set down their menus, she felt a renewed wave of purpose. It struck her that, even without Lorenzo Rivera's dramatic presence, the bistro had become its own kind of new world. She was forging deeper connections, finding allies in unexpected corners. There was Sabrina, who saw a reflection of her own past in Scarlett, and Jeff, who had dreams of his own, walking a parallel path. For so long, Scarlett had believed she was alone in her struggles, just a waitress juggling plates and her daughter's needs. Now she realized that life could be more than just surviving. With the right allies, perhaps she could navigate any challenge, even the possibility that Lily's father might step into their world. Late in the afternoon, Scarlett was wiping down a newly emptied table near the back of the bistro when she noticed Thomas standing near the entrance, speaking to someone in a low, urgent tone. She couldn't see the person's face, only that it was a woman dressed in expensive-looking clothing, a sleek blazer, tailored pants, heels that clicked assertively on the floor. Scarlett tried not to stare, but curiosity tugged at her. Was this another potential investor or a regular guest complaining about service? She moved closer, discreetly placing silverware on a nearby table in hopes of catching a better glimpse. Thomas stepped aside, allowing the woman to pass, and she walked further into the restaurant with a posture that exuded confidence. Her dark hair was pinned up neatly, and her gaze swept the bistro with faint disapproval. Finally, the woman turned, locking eyes with Scarlett for the briefest moment. There was something in that look, sharp, assessing. Scarlett lowered her head politely, returning to her tasks. She had no idea who this visitor was, but the tension in Thomas's posture suggested some kind of confrontation might be brewing. Instead of approaching any tables, the woman proceeded straight to the bar area and took a seat, crossing her legs with poised elegance. A few minutes later, Thomas cleared his throat near Scarlett. "Could you help the lady at the bar?" he asked, avoiding direct eye contact. She asked for a glass of wine. Scarlett nodded, smoothing her apron. "Of course. Do we know her name?" Thomas's eyes flickered. "Her name is Gianna. She says she's acquainted with Mr. Lorenzo Rivera." Something clenched in Scarlett's chest, a mix of intrigue and apprehension. She forced a neutral expression and headed to the bar, where Gianna was scanning the shelves of wine bottles with a critical eye. "Good afternoon," Scarlett said, her tone polite. "May I help you choose a wine?" Gianna's gaze shifted to Scarlett. Her voice had a slight accent that Scarlett couldn't quite place. "I'll have a glass of your finest Cabernet Sauvignon," she said, speaking as though each word was carefully weighed. "Certainly." Scarlett relayed the order to the bartender, then turned back. "Are you waiting for Mr. Rivera?" Gianna gave a small, thin-lipped smile. "Perhaps. I'm in town for personal matters, and I understood that Lorenzo conducts business here occasionally." Her eyes narrowed. "You work here regularly, yes?" Scarlett found the question slightly intrusive. "I do," she replied, maintaining a professional distance. Gianna's gaze swept over Scarlett's uniform, then lingered on her face. "And the staff, are they all content?" Scarlett wasn't sure how to respond. "We do our best," she said carefully, aware that something about this conversation felt off. Before Gianna could ask another question, the bartender placed the glass of Cabernet in front of her. Gianna took a small sip, then set it down, appearing unimpressed. "Adequate," she murmured. Scarlett glanced around, noticing Thomas hovering nervously. One of the other servers tried to motion Scarlett over, but Gianna's presence kept her rooted in place, unsure if she was supposed to provide further assistance or retreat. Eventually, Gianna waved Scarlett away with an elegant flick of her hand. "That will be all," she said, as though dismissing a servant. Scarlett swallowed a flare of irritation and stepped back, returning to the main dining area. She found Sabrina near the kitchen. Leaning in, she whispered, "Who is that woman at the bar? She asked for Mr. Rivera." Sabrina arched an eyebrow. "No idea, but she looks like trouble." "I got the same feeling," Scarlett admitted. They exchanged wary looks before returning to their respective tasks. Scarlett tried to keep her mind on the customers, but her thoughts spun. The mention of Lorenzo and Gianna's air of scrutiny left her unsettled. Could Gianna be a business associate, or something more personal like a family member? While delivering appetizers to a corner booth, Scarlett saw Gianna stand up and walk toward Thomas. The two spoke in hushed tones, and then Thomas handed Gianna a small envelope, his expression strained. Gianna pocketed the envelope and strode to the exit, not bothering to glance around. Scarlett released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. What on earth had just transpired? She wondered if this was the big meeting Thomas had been dreading all day. When Gianna was gone, Thomas caught Scarlett's eye and motioned her over. "If that lady comes back," he began, his voice subdued, "just direct her to me immediately." Scarlett nodded. "Of course. Is everything all right?" Thomas hesitated. "She's an associate of Mr. Rivera, yes. Let's just say she has strong opinions about how things should be run." He cleared his throat. "Not your concern, though." She recognized that as a cue to drop the subject. Still, apprehension lingered. Gianna's arrival felt like a harbinger of conflict, something stirring beneath the surface that Scarlett couldn't quite name. Returning to her tasks, Scarlett tried to brush away the tension, but it lingered in the back of her mind. Even though she didn't fully understand the situation, she had an uneasy sense that Gianna's interest in the bistro and in Lorenzo's affairs could spell trouble for anyone caught in the middle. She reminded herself that her priority was caring for Lily, finishing her nursing program and maintaining this job. Everything else, including the strange undercurrents involving Lorenzo Rivera, should remain on the periphery. But deep down, Scarlett couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger entanglement. Scarlett started her morning by rubbing the sleep from her eyes and making a mental list of all she had to tackle. Her next nursing exam was only a week away. Lily needed new shoes for school, and Thomas had scheduled her for extra hours at the Sunset Bistro due to staff shortages. The burden weighed heavily on her, but she forced herself to rise with resolve. Even Lily's cheerful voice felt like both an anchor and a reminder of why she couldn't afford to fail. After dressing Lily in a light sweater, Phoenix mornings could be cooler than one might expect. Scarlett quietly walked her daughter to Mrs. Robinson's apartment. She could sense the neighbor was still a bit pale from her recent illness. But Mrs. Robinson waved off Scarlett's concerns, ushering Lily inside with a smile. Then Scarlett hurried to catch the bus to her college campus, heart pounding at the thought of the upcoming lab session she couldn't afford to miss. Midway through her pediatric nursing class, Scarlett's phone buzzed. She glanced at it discreetly, expecting a message from Mrs. Robinson or perhaps from work. Instead, she saw an unknown number. Curiosity itched at her, but she couldn't interrupt the instructor to answer. She silenced the phone, vowing to check later. When the lecture ended, she stepped into the hallway and found a quieter corner. The message read, "Hello, Scarlett. This is Lorenzo Rivera. May we speak soon?" Her stomach flipped. She stared at the screen, torn between a strange surge of excitement and a familiar knot of anxiety. A quick glance around showed her classmates bustling, none aware of her private dilemma. She texted back a brief reply. "I'm in class right now. Maybe later today," then tucked the phone away. She didn't have time to unravel whatever Lorenzo wanted, especially after that unsettling visit from Gianna. She reached the Sunset Bistro just before lunch service. Jeff greeted her with a sympathetic grin, explaining that Sabrina was tied up with a huge catering order in the kitchen. "I hope you're up for a busy shift," he teased. "Thomas is in one of his moods." Scarlett sighed, slipping on her apron. "Aren't we all? Any sign of that woman from yesterday?" "Gianna?" Jeff shook his head. "No. But Thomas looked rattled after she left. I doubt we've seen the last of her." They stepped onto the dining floor, where an influx of customers had already begun to fill tables. Scarlett dove into her duties, seamlessly juggling the demands of a group celebrating a birthday and a solo businessman trying to finalize a conference call. Despite the hectic environment, her mind kept drifting to Lorenzo's text. She pictured his intense blue eyes and the cautious warmth in his voice. Part of her feared he might share the same arrogant streak Gianna displayed, but so far that hadn't quite matched her impressions of him. As noon wore on, Scarlett carried a tray of iced teas to a pair of elderly women chatting in hushed voices. She placed the drinks gently, offering her usual polite smile. When she turned to leave, one of the women called after her. "Thank you, dear. You have such a calming presence." Scarlett felt a flash of gratitude. Moments of appreciation like that reminded her that her kindness and patience mattered, even in a demanding environment. She collected dirty dishes at another table and delivered them to the kitchen, where Sabrina was knee-deep in prepping a lavish spread for a corporate event. "This is insane," Sabrina grumbled, mopping her brow with the edge of her sleeve. "Thomas took on this catering job last minute, and we're short on hands." Scarlett rolled up her sleeves without hesitation. "Tell me what you need." Sabrina pointed to a tray of garnishes. "Could you arrange those and get them out to the buffet line? Then maybe check on table 14. Someone said their pasta was undercooked." Scarlett set to work, quickly learning to juggle tasks. She dashed out with garnishes, reassured table 14 that she'd bring a fresh dish, then hurried back to relay the issue to the line cooks. Through it all, she maintained a smile, grateful that Lily was safely looked after and that the bustle of the bistro left no room for lingering doubts. Yet, the day felt like one test after another, an unrelenting series of hurdles demanding her resourcefulness, empathy, and stamina. Hours later, the rush began to wane. Exhausted, Scarlett paused in the corridor, leaning against the wall just long enough to take a single deep breath. She noticed a missed call on her phone, again from that unknown number. Her heart thumped. She suspected it was Lorenzo, but she wasn't sure she felt ready for a conversation about whatever revelation he wanted to share. Before she could return the call, Thomas rounded the corner with his clipboard, looking both frazzled and determined. "Scarlett," he said in a clipped tone, "we need you to stay a bit longer. Another large party just walked in, and I can't spare anyone else." She forced a tight smile. "Of course." Even though her entire body ached, a strange sense of resolve settled in her. It was one more trial in a day that seemed full of them, and she had no choice but to persevere. She pushed aside personal anxieties about Lorenzo, focusing on the immediate demands of her job. "One hurdle at a time," she repeated the mantra silently, hoping she wasn't biting off more than she could handle. Scarlett finally clocked out well after the dinner rush, her legs protesting every step. She trudged to the break room, where she sank onto a metal folding chair and checked her phone. 2 messages from Lorenzo. She stared at them, her heart pounding harder than she cared to admit. The first read, "I understand you're busy. Please let me know when we can talk." The second was shorter. "I'm sorry if this is inconvenient. It's important." She bit her lip, recalling their single encounter at the bistro, how Lily had unexpectedly run up to him yelling, "Daddy!" The memory still filled her with a complicated mix of embarrassment, anger, and a faint flicker of hope. Could it be that Lorenzo genuinely never knew she was pregnant years ago? Or was this some new tactic fueled by guilt? After a moment's hesitation, she tapped out a response. "I just finished my shift. You can call if you'd like." She braced herself, not entirely sure she wanted him to follow through. Seconds later, her phone buzzed. She clenched it tightly and answered, her throat suddenly dry. "Scarlett," Lorenzo said, his voice subdued. "Thank you for picking up. I don't mean to rush you, but things have come to my attention that I need to clarify. Are you free to meet somewhere?" Her pulse fluttered as she tried to measure her words. "I have class in the morning, but maybe I can find time in the afternoon," she offered, ignoring the swirl of emotions in her chest. "Is everything okay?" There was a short silence on his end. "I'm not entirely sure. I've learned some things from my family that—" He paused, sounding conflicted. "It might be better discussed in person. Will you allow me to explain?" She exhaled slowly. "All right. Let me figure out my schedule. I'll text you." When she ended the call, she remained seated, staring at the break room's scuffed floor. A wave of memories threatened to overwhelm her. How she'd been a college student full of naive hopes. How Lorenzo's sudden departure had left her confused and heartbroken. The questions about why he hadn't answered her messages while she was pregnant, and whether he'd truly never received them, weighed on her like stones. By the time she returned to her apartment, Lily was already asleep under Mrs. Robinson's watchful eye. Scarlett gently carried her daughter into her own bed, tucking a soft blanket around her small body. The child stirred, murmuring something about ice cream in her dreams, and Scarlett kissed her forehead, fighting the swirl of worries that threatened to surface. In the quiet darkness of the living room, Scarlett flipped open a nursing textbook, attempting to read about respiratory conditions in children, but the words blurred. Her mind was too scattered, caught in a storm of questions about Lorenzo's sudden reappearance and Gianna's enigmatic visit. She thought about the moral dilemma of whether she should allow Lily to see him. Did Lily have a right to know her father? Yes, but could Scarlett trust him not to vanish again? Her thoughts spiraled, dredging up old resentments. She recalled how alone and betrayed she'd felt when her attempts to reach him went unanswered. She remembered giving birth with only a kind nurse holding her hand, The postpartum days filled with raw exhaustion and heartache. She had done it all by herself. What if his reappearance only reopened the old wounds? She shut the textbook with a soft thud, pressing her fingertips to her temples. If she let Lorenzo in, would she be betraying her own sense of pride and self-reliance? Or would denying him access to Lily be unfair to both of them? The moral weight pressed down on her. Eventually, she rose and made herself some tea. The warm steam, a small comfort against the chill of doubt. She stood by the window, gazing at the city lights. In the reflection on the glass, she saw her own tired eyes looking back, and she wondered how much longer she could keep juggling everything. Tomorrow, she'd have to face her own conflicting emotions. She'd have to decide whether or not she was willing to hear Lorenzo out and possibly open her life to more chaos. No matter what, Lily's well-being came first. Yet Scarlett felt her defenses cracking. Maybe Lily deserved at least the chance to know her father, especially if it was all just a misunderstanding driven by his family. One thing was certain, she couldn't keep running from the past. Not now, when it was catching up with her so swiftly. She sipped her tea, feeling the tension coil in her chest, and reminded herself that she had overcome huge obstacles before. Whatever happened next, she would find the strength to face it. She had no other choice. Scarlett arranged to meet Lorenzo at a small cafe near the college campus. Neutral ground, she told herself. The place was modest but bright, with murals of desert sunsets on the walls. She chose a table in a quieter corner, hoping the subdued atmosphere would ease her nerves. She arrived first, placing her worn backpack at her feet. Inside it sat her nursing notes and a half-eaten granola bar, symbolic reminders of her life's juggling act. She glanced at the time on her phone, heart hammering. Would he show? Would she regret inviting him at all? The door chimed, and Lorenzo entered, scanning the room until he spotted her. Dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, he exuded a confidence that felt at odds with the shy smile he offered. As he approached, she stood, feeling a knot twist in her stomach. "Thanks for meeting me," he said quietly, settling into the seat across from her. She nodded, trying to gauge his mood. His gaze seemed softer than she remembered, and there was a palpable tension in his posture, as though he were just as unsure. They ordered coffees, hers black, his with a dash of cream. The awkward silence stretched until Lorenzo finally took a breath. "I've been speaking with my mother." She admitted she received messages from you years ago, but she never forwarded them to me. She was worried about my future plans. Scarlett's throat tightened. The confirmation hurt, even if she'd suspected it. "So she deliberately kept them from you," she whispered, her voice trembling with pent-up anger. He nodded, regret etched into his features. "I promise, I never saw those messages. I would never have ignored something like that, especially a child." He paused. "My mother believed she was protecting me from a situation that might derail my ambitions. She told me she feared I'd drop out of grad school and ruin my career." Scarlett clenched her fists under the table. "And what about me, left on my own to raise a daughter?" Lorenzo stared at his coffee cup. "I understand you have every right to be furious. And I won't pretend to fix years of hurt in a single conversation." He looked up, eyes pleading. "But I want to be in Lily's life, if you'll let me. I can't change the past, but maybe we can find a path forward." Her emotions churned, guilt and anger warring with a faint sense of relief. For so long, she had thought he'd abandoned her, that he'd simply walked away without a thought. Now she had to grapple with the fact that it was a deliberate action by someone else, someone with money and power over him. Yet another voice in her head reminded her of Gianna's cold demeanor, her disapproving gaze. "Your mother doesn't exactly seem keen on me either," Scarlett said. "She came to the restaurant the other day, acting like she owned the place." A flicker of frustration passed across Lorenzo's face. "Gianna can be difficult. She's always been protective of my reputation, my company, but that doesn't excuse what she did. Scarlett let out a trembling sigh. You understand, it's not just about you. I have to protect Lily, her emotions, her future. If you want to be a part of her life, it has to be consistent. I can't have you popping in for a few weeks and then disappearing if things get complicated. His voice softened. I know. And I don't blame you for hesitating. He hesitated himself, then cleared his throat. I'm staying in Phoenix longer this time, maybe permanently. I'd like to figure out how to be there for Lily. Financially, emotionally, whatever it takes. Scarlett's eyes stung, memories of hospital bills and late-night shifts rushing to the surface. She thought about all the times Lily had asked why she didn't have a daddy like the other kids. The idea of letting Lorenzo fill that void made her heart flutter with cautious hope, but also terror. At that moment, the cafe's door chimed again, and Scarlett glanced up reflexively. A young couple walked in, laughing as they joined the line for coffee. The normalcy of the scene struck her, a reminder that her life had been anything but normal for years. She exhaled slowly. Let's say I'm open to it. How do we start? Lorenzo's shoulders relaxed just slightly, as though a massive weight had lifted. Maybe we start by you and Lily meeting me somewhere she'd enjoy. A park, perhaps. No pressure, just get to know each other. Scarlett nodded, her mind already racing with worries and possibilities. She felt cornered by an obstacle she'd never expected, trusting someone who hadn't truly abandoned her, but who hadn't been there either. The tension between relief and fear was overwhelming. They exchanged a few more words, discussing vague details, until her phone buzzed with a reminder that she had class soon. She gathered her backpack and stood, feeling as though she'd just made a decision that could reshape her entire future. Lorenzo offered a half smile, standing too. They exchanged an awkward goodbye, neither quite sure what came next. As Scarlett walked out, the Arizona sun bathed her in warmth, but she couldn't shake the chill of uncertainty. She was stepping into a territory she found almost insurmountable, a place where forgiveness, vulnerability, and a mother's duty collided. That weekend, Scarlett found herself pacing the edges of Encanto Park, a lush oasis in the middle of Phoenix. Tall palm trees provided a canopy of shade over winding pathways, and a small lake sat at the center, dotted with pedal boats. Lily clung to Scarlett's hand, her eyes scanning the playground equipment and the sparkling water beyond. Lorenzo had suggested this place for their initial meeting with Lily. As the time drew near, Scarlett's nerves simmered. She was determined to appear calm, but inside, every doubt and fear she'd bottled up threatened to spill. "Mommy," Lily said, tugging Scarlett's arm, "can I go play on the swings?" Scarlett paused, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Soon, sweetheart. We're waiting for someone." Before Lily could question her further, Lorenzo appeared at the entrance of the playground, hands in his pockets. He wore casual jeans and a polo shirt, a departure from the sleek business attire Scarlett was used to seeing him in. Approaching cautiously, he gave Scarlett a brief, understanding nod, then knelt to Lily's level. "Hello, Lily," he said quietly, offering a gentle smile. His tone was respectful but tinged with a hint of nervousness. Lily tilted her head, studying him. "Hi," she replied, her voice soft. She clutched Scarlett's hand a bit tighter. Scarlett swallowed, reminding herself that this was the right step. She introduced him in simple terms. "Lily, this is Lorenzo. He's someone important I want you to meet." Lily glanced between them, her small brow furrowing. "You look like that man from the restaurant. Are you Mommy's friend?" Lorenzo's eyes flicked up to Scarlett, seeking guidance. She nodded almost imperceptibly, and he smiled. "I'm hoping we can be friends, yes." After a brief hesitation, Lily loosened her grip on Scarlett and took a small step toward Lorenzo. She seemed curious about his warm smile and the gentleness in his voice. "Do you want to push me on the swing?" she finally asked, in that blunt way children have of cutting to the heart of the matter. Relief fluttered across Lorenzo's face. "I'd love to." Scarlett watched as they moved to the swing set. Lorenzo gently pushed Lily, who giggled each time she swung forward. The sight was jarring and comforting at once, a piece of normalcy she'd never expected. Still, the tension in her chest remained. Would Lily be hurt if Lorenzo decided this life was too complicated? Or if Gianna stepped in again to stop him? She took a seat on a nearby bench, keeping them in view. Lorenzo was smiling, answering Lily's rapid questions about the park, about pedal boats, about whether he liked ice cream. Scarlett felt something shift inside her, a tiny spark of hope that maybe, with patience, they could navigate this new dynamic. As Lily ran off to climb on a small jungle gym, Lorenzo approached Scarlett, hands still in his pockets. "She's amazing," he said softly, glancing at their daughter with wonder. "Thank you for letting me do this." Scarlett nodded, arms folded as she tried to maintain her composure. "She's been asking about you, well, about having a dad, for a while now," she admitted, her gaze fixed on Lily. "I kept things vague. I never wanted to lie, but..." Lorenzo's voice was heavy with remorse. "I understand. I'm sorry for the pain you both went through." She swallowed the lump in her throat. A wave of emotion rose, and she forced it back down, not wanting to break down in front of Lily. "Let's just see how things go," she managed. "She deserves the chance to know you, and you deserve to know her." They stood there awkwardly for a moment, the hum of laughter and children's squeals filling the air. Lorenzo eventually suggested renting a pedal boat. Lily squealed with excitement at the idea, and Scarlett felt a pang of nostalgia. She'd always wanted to take Lily to do more fun activities, but rarely had the time or money. On the water, Lily insisted on helping steer the boat, nearly veering them into reeds more than once. Lorenzo laughed, showing her how to turn the small wheel more gently, and Lily clapped, proud of herself for learning a new skill. Scarlett sat across from them, a soft smile on her lips, heart pounding with every easy exchange between father and daughter. The day ended with ice cream at a nearby stand, Lily chatting non-stop about how Daddy showed me how to steer. Scarlett flinched at the word Daddy, but she didn't correct Lily. Instead, she let the child revel in the moment. As they walked back to the parking lot, Scarlett could almost taste the bittersweet tang of progress. This was a small victory, a partial breakthrough in what she feared would be a long, winding road. She still felt uneasy about trusting Lorenzo completely, but she recognized the beginnings of a change, an opening for Lily to build the connection she'd always deserved. Before they parted, Lorenzo asked if they could meet again soon. Scarlett nodded, hesitantly, acknowledging how much Lily had lit up. It was clear Lily wanted more of these moments, and maybe Scarlett, despite all her reservations, did too. She said goodbye without making any promises, but recognized that something within her had shifted, if only slightly. Over the following days, life at the Sunset Bistro continued at a frenetic pace. Scarlett juggled her server's apron and her nursing textbooks, grateful that Lily now stayed with Mrs. Robinson, or sometimes even played quietly in Sabrina's office when needed. The friendship with Sabrina and Jeff became more than just a work connection. They were a supportive net that helped her navigate sudden schedule changes and parental responsibilities. Despite the added support, Scarlett felt an intensifying undercurrent of tension. Lorenzo had texted a few times, hoping to schedule another outing with Lily. Each message set off a flutter of uncertainty. She couldn't deny how thrilled Lily had been to spend the day with her father, but a stubborn voice inside her warned to proceed with caution. One afternoon, as she was polishing silverware at the back station, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, seeing a new message from Lorenzo. "My mother is in town again. She wants to meet you and Lily, but I told her I'd speak to you first. Is that okay?" Scarlett's stomach clenched. Gianna's last appearance at the bistro had been unsettling enough. The idea of bringing Lily into that dynamic felt risky. She took a deep breath and texted back, "Not sure. Let me think about it." She was about to stash her phone away when Thomas appeared, a frown etched on his face. "Scarlett, table 8 is complaining that their order's late. What's going on?" "Sorry, I'll check the kitchen," she said, forcing a smile. "We've been short-staffed." He grumbled but waved her off. She rushed to the kitchen, where Sabrina was already preparing the dish. "Almost done," Sabrina called, wiping sweat from her brow. "Thomas needs to back off." Scarlett nodded. Feeling a swirl of gratitude and stress, she retrieved the finished plate and delivered it to table 8, apologizing for the delay. The customers seemed appeased, and she hurried away to handle the next crisis. As evening approached, the restaurant's tempo began to slow. Scarlett took advantage of the lull to check her phone. Another text from Lorenzo. "Take your time. I understand your concerns." She sighed, appreciating his patience, yet still wary about Gianna. The next day, she had an important exam in her nursing course, one that counted heavily toward her final grade. She decided she couldn't focus on meeting Gianna until she had that out of the way. Late that night, after Lily was asleep, Scarlett reviewed her study notes at the small dining table. She flipped through flashcards on pediatric vital signs, checking her knowledge while fighting the urge to let her mind wander. Everything. Gianna's potential interference, Lorenzo's repeated attempts, the expectations at the bistro, piled onto her shoulders. Halfway through her study session, her phone buzzed once more. She glanced at it, ready to be frustrated, but saw instead a message from Sabrina. "Just wanted to say you're doing great. Don't stress the exam. You've got this." Scarlett's chest tightened with gratitude. She sent a quick thank you back, then let the corners of her mouth lift in a tired smile. Having a friend who genuinely believed in her abilities made the late-night study sessions feel less lonely. When morning came, Scarlett dropped Lily off at school, then dashed to campus for the exam. Grace, her classmate, offered a quiet wish of good luck as they found their seats. The exam questions were tough, asking for detailed explanations of pediatric disease management and ethical considerations. Scarlett recalled a few real-life experiences with Lily's fevers and doctor visits, weaving her knowledge into the answers. By the time she walked out of the classroom, her head felt like it had been stuffed with cotton. She sank onto a bench in the hallway, letting out a long breath. Grace joined her, looking equally spent. "That was brutal," Grace muttered, sipping from a water bottle. Scarlett nodded. "I'm just glad it's over." Her phone vibrated again. She glanced down and saw Lorenzo's name. She opened the message. "I know you're busy. Whenever you're ready, I'd like to talk about introducing Lily to my mother." Frowning, Scarlett considered her next move. Meeting Gianna could be a crucial step, either to confirm that she'd accept Lily or to prove she intended to stand in the way. Scarlett pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her pulse quicken. If she wanted to protect Lily, maybe it was better to meet Gianna with boundaries set firmly in place. But that would require inner strength, the kind of confidence she wasn't sure she possessed. This was the moment she realized her greatest battle might not be with Gianna or Lorenzo, but with her own fear of being judged, of losing independence, of confronting the pain she'd endured alone for so long. Tucking her phone away, Scarlett stood and adjusted her backpack. She wished she could freeze time and hide from all these decisions, but that wasn't an option. She was on a path she hadn't asked for, but one she had to walk, for Lily's sake and her own. She left the campus, knowing the real test wasn't finished. The swirling challenges of motherhood, work, and a family she never thought she'd have still lay ahead. Strengthening her resolve, she told herself that whatever Gianna's intentions were, Scarlett wouldn't back down. She was done letting others dictate her life. The day stretched before her, brimming with uncertainty, but also a sense of clarity. She might not have all the answers, but she felt one truth crystallizing. Her toughest trials were yet to come, and they'd demand every ounce of courage she could muster. Scarlett sat in the break room of the Sunset Bistro, her nerves frayed after a busy lunch service. She'd spent the morning at Lily's school for a parent-teacher conference, and the conversation had reminded her how quickly her daughter was growing. Now, in this brief lull between shifts, she was attempting to gather her thoughts, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. The door swung open, revealing Thomas with a tense expression. "Scarlett," he said in a lowered voice, "could you come to my office for a moment?" Her stomach twisted. She hadn't done anything wrong, at least not to her knowledge. Rising, she followed him down a narrow hallway and into his cramped office. Papers and invoices were strewn about, and a half-empty cup of cold tea sat on the edge of his desk. Thomas gestured for her to close the door. "We need to talk about what happened earlier. Gianna Rivera was here." Scarlett's heart gave a startled jump. "She, here, today?" Thomas raked a hand through his grey hair. "Yes. And let's just say her presence wasn't pleasant. She asked questions about you, about Lily." Scarlett's face went hot. "What kind of questions?" "She wanted to know your schedule, whether Lorenzo had been around, all that." Thomas exhaled slowly. "I didn't give her personal details, of course, but she made it clear she expects cooperation." A flare of anger rose in Scarlett's chest. "She's crossing boundaries." "Lily and I aren't her concern," Thomas nodded reluctantly. "I get that, but the woman seems convinced she has a stake in Lorenzo's affairs, and she's not shy about throwing around her influence. Look, Scarlett, I'm just warning you. If she keeps coming here, I can't guarantee I can shield you from any fallout." Scarlett's mind churned. The idea of Gianna sniffing around for information about Lily felt invasive and menacing. "Thank you for telling me," she said, her throat tight. "I appreciate the heads up." When she stepped out of Thomas's office, she nearly bumped into Sabrina. One glance at Scarlett's troubled face told the cook something was wrong. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Sabrina remarked, leading Scarlett to a quieter corner. "Gianna was here," Scarlett explained in a hushed voice. "She's digging into my life and Lily's." "It makes my skin crawl." Sabrina frowned, crossing her arms. "That woman seems determined to keep Lorenzo under her thumb. I wouldn't be surprised if she's trying to scare you away so he stays focused on business." Scarlett nodded, remembering how Lorenzo had mentioned his mother's deep involvement in his career. "I have to warn him, but I also don't want to drag him into a fight with her. Lily is my priority. I don't want her upset." A thoughtful silence passed. Then Sabrina's hand rested gently on Scarlett's shoulder. "This might be the moment you need to stand your ground, Scarlett. You've been through so much already. Maybe it's time to confront Gianna directly. Let her see you're not backing down." Scarlett swallowed hard. The notion of going head-to-head with Gianna Rivera felt terrifying, yet a wave of firm resolve took root inside her. "You're right," she said at last. "I'm done letting people push me around." The day wore on slowly, each table she served feeling like a step closer to an impending showdown. By the time her shift ended, she had managed to call Lorenzo, who sounded alarmed at the news of Gianna's sudden appearance. "She told me she was going to the West Coast on business," Lorenzo muttered over the phone. "I had no idea she was back in Phoenix so soon. I'm not comfortable with her questioning my boss about my schedule," Scarlett said quietly. "And Lily, she's never even met Lily. She has no right to pry." A heavy sigh came through the line. "I'll talk to her. She needs to understand boundaries. But Scarlett, my mother can be stubborn." Holding her phone tightly, Scarlett glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "I'm prepared for that," she said, though her voice trembled ever so slightly. That evening, as she arrived home, Lily was busy coloring pictures of cartoon animals on the coffee table. Mrs. Robinson sat on the couch, reading a paperback novel. Scarlett thanked her for babysitting, trying her best to appear composed. Once they were alone, Scarlett couldn't help but watch Lily's peaceful expression. Her daughter was humming a tune, blissfully unaware of adult complications. Scarlett knew she had to protect that innocence. She also recognized that might mean facing Gianna Rivera and possibly forcing Lorenzo to stand up to his mother. She sank onto the couch after Lily went to bed, flipping through her phone contacts until she found Gianna's number. It had shown up on her phone screen once, back when Gianna had briefly tried to call her to discuss matters. Scarlett had ignored it, but now she felt a new determination. She texted a short message, her heart pounding. "This is Scarlett. I heard you came by the restaurant. We should talk." Hitting send, she let out a shaky breath. She was setting into motion a confrontation she'd been dreading, a battle she hadn't asked for. But if it brought clarity and protected her daughter, she would do it without hesitation. The next afternoon, Gianna Rivera agreed to meet Scarlett at a downtown cafe. Scarlett arrived first, fidgeting with the sleeves of her cardigan, her stomach knotted. She remembered the last time she saw Gianna's poised, regal figure in the Sunset Bistro, a woman who radiated wealth and authority, and who had no qualms about intimidation. When Gianna entered, heads turned. She wore a tailored navy suit, her dark hair swept into a glossy chignon. Her expression, cool and impassive, settled on Scarlett as she approached. "Scarlett?" Gianna greeted in a tone that was more assessment than warmth. "Shall we sit?" Scarlett forced a polite nod. They took seats at a small table near the window. Outside, the sounds of traffic buzzed, and passers-by hurried along the sidewalk. An awkward silence stretched before them until Gianna signaled a waiter for a glass of water. Once the waiter stepped away, Gianna spoke, her voice clipped. "I must admit, I'm surprised you wanted to meet with me. I assumed you'd prefer to keep your distance." Scarlett swallowed, determined not to let her voice shake. "I'm not one to run from problems. You've been coming to my workplace, asking personal questions. I need to understand why." Gianna's gaze flicked across Scarlett's face, as though searching for weakness. "I have concerns." "Of course," she said. "Concerns about how your arrangement might affect Lorenzo's reputation, his business, and—" "My child's name is Lily," Scarlett interrupted firmly, setting her jaw. "She's not an arrangement. And if you're so worried about Lorenzo's reputation, maybe ask yourself how it looks that he was kept in the dark about her for years." An irritated flush rose on Gianna's cheeks. She set her water glass down, lips pursed. "That was a misunderstanding," she said, though her tone lacked conviction. "I did what I believed was best for my son at the time. I won't apologize for protecting his future." Scarlett felt her pulse spike. "You might not regret it, but you changed both our lives forever. I had to raise Lily alone, believing Lorenzo simply vanished." Silence followed, tension coiling in the air. Gianna pressed her manicured nails against the tablecloth. "I understand your resentment, but it's done. The question now is how to move forward in a way that doesn't destroy Lorenzo's public image or Lily's well-being? Scarlett bristled at the notion that a child's welfare and business interests could be weighed on the same scale. "Lily is thriving," she said, voice low. "I may not have money or status, but I've managed. Now Lorenzo wants to be involved in her life. That's between us and Lily, not you." Gianna's expression hardened. "Lorenzo is still my son. My only son. If he chooses to acknowledge Lily, there will be consequences. Potential investors could question his judgment, wonder about scandal, gossip in certain circles." "Is that all you care about?" Scarlett hissed, her patience snapping. "Gossip and investor opinions? This is a little girl's life, her father's chance to be present. Lily isn't a risk factor in a spreadsheet." Gianna inhaled sharply. For a moment, Scarlett thought she might walk out. But instead, she exhaled, her shoulders dropping a fraction. "I didn't come here to trade insults," she said, voice measured. "I came to see who you really are, the mother of my grandchild." Scarlett felt a pang of unexpected emotion at the word grandchild. She studied Gianna's face, noticing a trace of genuine vulnerability beneath the haughty exterior. "So what do you see?" Gianna looked down at her water glass, swirling the liquid in a slow circle. "I see a woman who's braver than I expected, resourceful, certainly, but also someone who could derail everything Lorenzo has built if things get messy. If the media learns he suddenly has a 6-year-old daughter." Scarlett's throat tightened. "He's the one who lost the chance to know his own child. He's trying now. I'm allowing it for Lily's sake. Do you have any idea how confusing this has been for her?" Gianna placed the glass down with a soft clink, and for a moment, her eyes flickered with something like regret. "Children adapt," she said, though not unkindly. "I suppose my question is whether you're prepared to adapt as well. If you're serious about letting Lorenzo into Lily's life, then you must be aware that his world, our world, is more complicated than you realize. Everything he does is public, scrutinized." Scarlett lifted her chin. "I'm not naive, but Lily has a right to her father, and Lorenzo has a right to his child." She paused, unsure if she should say more, then pressed on. "This was never about destroying him. I only want what's best for Lily." Gianna was silent for a long time, her gaze thoughtful. When she finally spoke, her tone was softer. "I'll reserve judgment, but I won't deny I'm protective of my son's interests. If you expect me to welcome this situation with open arms, you're misguided. However," she hesitated, then added, "I see that pushing you away might drive Lorenzo further. That's not my goal either." Scarlett released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. It wasn't an apology, but at least it wasn't an outright attack. "So where do we go from here?" Gianna eyed her. "We let them meet, and we watch carefully. I won't sabotage Lorenzo's relationship with Lily, but I will intervene if it threatens to spiral." A mixture of relief and lingering anger coursed through Scarlett. "Fine," she said, deciding not to argue further. "Thank you for meeting me." Gianna rose from the table, smoothing her suit jacket. "I'll be in touch." Without another word, she turned and glided out of the cafe, leaving Scarlett alone, heart hammering in her chest. Scarlett stared at the empty chair across from her, uncertain whether she'd just found an uneasy truce or ignited a new level of tension. Yet she sensed that something had shifted. Gianna had finally acknowledged Lily's existence, however reluctantly. Now the question was whether that acknowledgement would pave the way for peace or explode into a bigger conflict than any of them had foreseen. Scarlett left the cafe feeling like she'd run a marathon. The confrontation with Gianna had both drained and ignited her. She walked 2 blocks under the Arizona sun until she reached a shaded bench, where she collapsed to collect her thoughts. Her phone buzzed. She expected a message from Lorenzo asking about the meeting, but it was a text from Sabrina. "Haven't seen you at the bistro today. Everything okay?" Scarlett typed a quick reply, "I'm fine. Dealt with Jana. Will fill you in soon." She then dialed Lorenzo, nerves on edge. When he answered, she recapped the conversation, his sudden intake of breath indicating surprise. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "She shouldn't have gone behind my back, pressing you like that." "Well, she did," Scarlett replied, unable to mask her weariness. "And the result is some sort of half-truce. She's not going to stop you from seeing Lily, but she made it clear she's watching every move." Lorenzo was silent for a moment. "I appreciate you standing up for Lily and for yourself. My mother can be intimidating." "That's one word for it," Scarlett said, a hint of a laugh escaping. "She's not backing off easily, but at least she acknowledges Lily. Maybe that's progress." They agreed to speak more in person soon, and Scarlett ended the call. After a few deep breaths, she rose from the bench and headed toward the bus stop. Her schedule was tight, a shift at the bistro in the evening, plus Lily's bedtime routine. She allowed herself a momentary dream, how different life might be if she had more support, financially and emotionally. Then she scolded herself for wishing she'd chosen to stand on her own for so long. Later that day, when she arrived at work, Sabrina was waiting with a hug. "You look exhausted," the head cook said, concern etched on her face. "Was it that bad?" Scarlett managed a tired smile. "Not as bad as I feared, but definitely tense." She gave Sabrina the gist of the conversation, leaving out the finer details. Sabrina shook her head, lips pressed in a thin line. "I can't imagine facing someone like that, not after all you've already been through. I'm proud of you." Scarlett felt her throat tighten with gratitude. "Thanks. I needed that." The evening shift was mostly uneventful, allowing Scarlett to take a few moments to regroup. She found herself mentally replaying Gianna's words, her warnings about public scrutiny, the insinuation that Lily could become a liability in Lorenzo's polished world. Despite the frustration, Scarlett recognized a kernel of truth. If Lorenzo publicly acknowledged having a daughter, the media might latch on, leading to gossip and speculation. How would that affect Lily? On her break, she spotted Jeff polishing wine glasses. Sliding into a stool beside him, she offered a rueful grin. "Any chance you've got some magic advice for dealing with pushy in-laws?" Jeff laughed softly. "Ah, so that's how we're labeling her now." "Seems fitting," Scarlett joked, though her voice held a nervous tremor. "You know, I never pictured my life like this, negotiating with millionaires and their intimidating mothers. I feel out of my depth." Jeff finished polishing a glass, setting it down carefully. "But here you are, holding your own. That's pretty impressive. I'm sure Lily will appreciate everything you're doing someday." The mention of Lily made Scarlett's eyes grow misty. "I hope so. Right now I'm just trying to make sure she's safe and happy." Jeff tilted his head sympathetically. "And yourself? Are you okay?" Scarlett gave a small shrug. "I'm getting by." She paused, then added quietly, "Sometimes I wonder if letting Lorenzo in is the right choice, but Lily's thrilled to see him, and he seems genuine." Jeff smiled. "Sounds like you already know the answer, somewhere deep down." His words lingered in Scarlett's mind long after they returned to serving tables. By the time she clocked out, her eyes burned from exhaustion, but a small kernel of hope shone brighter. Maybe Gianna's grudging acceptance indicated the first step toward a future where Lily could have both parents in her life without the constant specter of conflict. At home, Lily dozed on the sofa. Crayons scattered around another half-finished drawing of a family, this time 3 figures holding hands in front of a bright sun. Scarlett's chest ached at the sight. She lifted her sleeping daughter gently, carrying her to bed. In her own room, she tried to read a chapter from her nursing textbook, but found her gaze drifting to Lily's drawing propped on the coffee table. She couldn't help but wonder if a real family scene was possible for them. She wanted to believe it was, even if Gianna remained an ominous presence in the background. That night, she drifted off with conflicting emotions swirling in her dreams. The memory of Gianna's cold stare, the warmth of Lorenzo's voice reassuring her, and the flutter of possibility every time Lily mentioned Daddy. The following week brought a mix of hectic shifts at the bistro and demanding nursing exams. Each evening, Scarlett juggled Lily's homework, her own coursework, and a round of texts from Lorenzo. He'd started sending pictures of places he wanted to take Lily: museums, a children's science center, a weekend trip to the Grand Canyon. Scarlett found her heart softening each time she saw the genuine excitement in Lily's face when Lorenzo's name was mentioned. One afternoon, as the sun blazed outside, Sabrina pulled Scarlett aside during a break. They huddled near the kitchen pantry, away from Thomas's watchful eye. "So, how's everything with Lorenzo? Are you letting him do all these grand outings?" Scarlett sighed, pushing a stray hair behind her ear. "I'm tempted to say yes, but it's complicated. Every plan he makes goes through the lens of, what will his mother think? What if the media finds out? I don't want Lily to be some secret or scandal." Sabrina nodded thoughtfully. "Have you told him that outright?" "Not yet," Scarlett admitted, "but I will. If he's serious about being Lily's father, it can't just be behind closed doors." That evening, when Lily was fast asleep, Scarlett sat on her worn couch, phone in hand. She composed a text to Lorenzo, explaining her concerns. "I want Lily to have you in her life, but I can't hide her. I won't let her think she's something to be ashamed of. If we're doing this, it's got to be real." Lorenzo's reply came quicker than she expected. "I understand. Maybe we should talk in person. I have an idea." They arranged to meet at a park near Lily's school that weekend. Scarlett hoped the quiet, green space might offer some clarity. When Saturday arrived, Lily ran excited circles around Scarlett as they waited on a blanket under a big oak tree. She had on her favorite sneakers, the ones decorated with sparkly stars. Lorenzo appeared carrying a paper bag of pastries, wearing a relaxed button-down shirt. Scarlett noticed he looked tired, a faint worry line creasing his brow. Lily immediately lunged for him, excited to receive a warm hug. The sight tugged at Scarlett's heart, a reminder of what had been missing in Lily's life for so long. After Lily darted off to chase a butterfly, Lorenzo handed Scarlett a pastry. "Raspberry Danish," he said softly. "Figured we could all use something sweet." Scarlett thanked him, then nodded to a picnic bench where they could sit. She took a careful bite of the Danish and exhaled. "This is amazing," he half smiled. "I've been stressed lately. My mother wants me to ramp up corporate investments on the East Coast, but I want to stay in Phoenix. I have business here. And now, Lily." Scarlett set the pastry down on a napkin. "Then tell her, stand firm. If you really plan to be in Lily's life, you can't let your mother dictate everything." Lorenzo's gaze flickered. "I've told her I'm not leaving Phoenix. She's unhappy." A breeze ruffled the grass, carrying Lily's laughter from a few yards away. Scarlett tried to keep her voice calm. "I'm glad you're standing up for yourself. But you also need to address the secrecy issue." Lorenzo nodded, turning slightly to watch Lily scamper around. "That's why I wanted to meet. I've decided. I'm going to publicly acknowledge Lily as my daughter." Scarlett's heart thudded. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means I'll issue a statement through my PR team, clarifying that I have a daughter, that I wasn't aware of her existence until recently. I'll keep details minimal, but I won't hide her." He swallowed, looking a touch nervous. "You and Lily might get some attention from reporters or paparazzi for a bit, but I think it's better than secrets." Scarlett's mind raced. She imagined the onslaught of questions, the potential for gossip in tabloids. "That's a big step. I appreciate your honesty, but are we ready for that?" He placed a hand over hers. "We might never feel fully ready, but Lily deserves to know her father without half measures." She locked eyes with him, reading the sincerity there. This was what she'd asked for, a chance for Lily to be acknowledged openly, but it also meant stepping into Lorenzo's complicated world. A million anxieties nagged at her. Would Gianna retaliate? Would Lily be teased at school? Would Scarlett lose her sense of independence? Yet, as Lily bounded back toward them, clutching a handful of wildflowers, Scarlett felt a surprising calm wash over her. Maybe this was the next logical step in her journey, letting others in, trusting that she could remain strong even in a storm of publicity. She smiled at Lily, then glanced at Lorenzo. "All right," she said softly. "If this is what you think is best, then I'll support it. But let's be cautious. Lily's safety and happiness come first." He squeezed her hand gently, eyes shining with relief. "Thank you. I promise we'll protect her together." Though uncertainty still churned in Scarlett's chest, she found herself nodding. Something told her this was the prelude to a far bigger decision, one that could reshape all their lives. Days later, Scarlett stood in her living room, nervously awaiting Lorenzo's arrival. He planned to pick her and Lily up for a small gathering at his downtown office, where he intended to tell a few close associates about Lily. It wasn't the full public statement yet, but it was the first open acknowledgement of fatherhood in a professional setting. Lily danced around the coffee table, wearing a new pastel dress that Scarlett had saved up to buy. "Mommy, do I look fancy?" she asked, striking a playful pose. Scarlett smiled. "You look perfect." A gentle knock on the door interrupted them. Scarlett opened it to find Lorenzo in a tailored blazer, but not so formal that he looked stiff. He held a small bouquet of flowers in one hand, smiling sheepishly. "For you," he murmured, handing them to Scarlett. Surprised warmth flooded Scarlett's cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, stepping aside to let him in. Lily immediately launched into an excited greeting, and he knelt down to compliment her dress. Together, they made their way downtown. Lorenzo's office was situated in a sleek high-rise, with tinted windows overlooking Phoenix. As they entered the lobby, Scarlett felt self-conscious, aware of her simple blouse and skirt in a sea of sharp suits and designer heels. A few of Lorenzo's associates greeted them. She recognized one man from the bistro, and the polite smile he gave was tinged with genuine curiosity. They all crowded into a private conference room, where Lorenzo introduced Lily and explained the recent discovery that he was indeed a father. Some gasped, others beamed. A woman in a charcoal-grey dress stepped forward to shake Scarlett's hand, murmuring words of congratulations. Then for a while, Scarlett was bombarded with cautious questions about Lily's interests, her school, and how long they'd be staying. Lorenzo's voice cut through the chatter, filled with quiet authority. "Lily is part of my life now. I trust all of you will respect her privacy, and Scarlett's as well." Scarlett glanced up, meeting his gaze. Despite her uncertainty, a deep sense of gratitude welled inside her. He was defending their family in a place he'd always been guided by corporate goals. It felt like a victory she'd scarcely dared to hope for. Lily, meanwhile, seemed intrigued by the modern decor, the glass walls, and the big view of the city. She tugged on Scarlett's hand. "Mommy, look how high we are." Scarlett lifted her daughter so she could see better, smiling at the child's awe. This was a glimpse of Lorenzo's world, a realm of sleek offices, swift decisions, and strategic partnerships. a realm Scarlett had never imagined for herself. When the gathering wound down, Lorenzo led them to his corner office, offering bottled water and a moment of quiet. He crouched beside Lily, showing her the view of skyscrapers and roads below. "Maybe one day you can help me design a new building," he joked gently. "What do you think?" Lily giggled, though the idea clearly intrigued her. "A building with a big playground on top?" Scarlett laughed, a rush of relief washing away her earlier tension. These small moments felt precious, the kind of normal father-daughter banter Lily had never experienced. As they prepared to leave, Lorenzo's phone buzzed. He stepped aside, his expression sobering as he answered. Scarlett caught only fragments of the conversation. Something about an upcoming board meeting, a potential need for him to travel. Her heart clenched at the thought of him leaving Phoenix. She had to remind herself that this was his work life. She couldn't demand he never travel. When he hung up, Lorenzo faced Scarlett. "I might have to go to New York for a week. I hate the timing." He paused, searching her face. "But I'll be back as soon as possible, I promise." Scarlett nodded, holding Lily's hand. "I understand. Your job won't stop just because we showed up." He smiled at Lily, giving her an affectionate pat on the head. "We'll do something fun when I return, okay?" Lily nodded, content for now. Scarlett felt the pull of uncertainty again. She trusted that Lorenzo intended to come back, but a nagging voice warned her not to rely too heavily on him. Walking out of the building, she took in a deep breath of the desert air. She thought about how far they'd come. Lily was openly acknowledged as Lorenzo's daughter, even in his professional circle. That alone felt like a reward for all the hardships and misunderstandings. But she also sensed the next hurdle wasn't far off. Gianna's reaction, the possibility of public exposure, and the simple truth that balancing a family and 2 careers wasn't easy. Still, for the first time, Scarlett felt a surge of optimism. She had a job she was good at, a daughter who filled her life with joy, and now a real shot at giving Lily the father she deserved. She held Lily's hand a little tighter, stepping into the sunshine with a hopeful heart. There were still challenges ahead, but maybe, just maybe, their small family could withstand whatever came next. Scarlett Carter found herself adjusting to a slower rhythm in the days after Lorenzo left for New York. The flurry of recent events, meeting Gianna, telling his associates about Lily, had left her mind spinning. Now, the pace felt almost eerily calm. She continued her shifts at the Sunset Bistro, still juggling her nursing classes, while Lily went to school each morning, gleefully sharing stories of her daddy. One warm afternoon, Scarlett arrived home to the sight of Lily sprawled across the living room rug with a children's atlas. Mrs. Robinson sat nearby on the couch, sipping tea. The older woman brightened at Scarlett's entrance. "Your Lily has been showing me where she thinks her daddy is right now," she said, smiling at the child's enthusiasm. Lily waved Scarlett over. "Mommy, look, New York is so far. But Daddy said it only takes a few hours by plane." Scarlett knelt beside her, scanning the atlas. "That's right, sweetheart. He'll be back soon." The child's eyes shone. "He said we could go there someday, and I could see the tall buildings." An unexpected pang tugged at Scarlett's heart. She pictured herself navigating a city like New York with Lily, hand in hand, possibly with Lorenzo. The idea felt both thrilling and terrifying. She couldn't remember the last time she'd traveled anywhere beyond a neighboring town. "We'll see," she said gently, not wanting to squash Lily's hopes yet remaining cautious. Soon after Mrs. Robinson left, Scarlett received a text from Sabrina. "Having a staff dinner tomorrow after closing. You should come." The idea of a casual gathering with colleagues appealed to Scarlett. She realized she rarely spent time with them outside the restaurant's hectic environment. It might be a chance to reclaim some sense of normalcy and connect with people who'd become like family. The next night, after the bistro's closing, she hopped into Jeff's old sedan, along with two other co-workers, as they headed to a family-owned Mexican restaurant across town. Sabrina rode separately on her motorcycle, promising to meet them there. They piled into a corner booth, a mismatched group of waiters, cooks and bussers relieved to be away from the usual hum of the Sunset Bistro. Scarlett found herself seated between Jeff and Sabrina, the aroma of sizzling fajitas making her mouth water. Someone suggested ordering a round of margaritas, and though Scarlett rarely drank, she allowed herself a single glass. The tangy sweetness was refreshing, a small indulgence she'd denied herself for too long. As the group chatted about everything from local gossip to future dreams, Sabrina tossed Scarlett a curious glance. "How's Lily handling Lorenzo's absence?" she asked, keeping her voice soft. Scarlett fiddled with her glass, considering the question. "Surprisingly well. She misses him, but she's been chattering about how he'll be back soon. She's more optimistic than I am, I think." Sabrina patted her shoulder. "Kids have a way of bouncing back from worries." Jeff leaned over, tipping his soda in a mock toast. "Scarlett's braver than she knows, dealing with all this drama while acing her nursing exams." She felt her cheeks flush. "I'm just hanging on. Honestly, sometimes I can't believe any of this is real. Lorenzo, his mother, everything." Sabrina looked thoughtful. "Real life is messy, but you're doing it piece by piece." As the evening wore on, the conversation drifted to stories of bizarre customer requests and humorous mishaps in the kitchen. Laughter filled the booth, a comforting reminder that Scarlett had a support system outside her immediate troubles. Even Thomas made an appearance, albeit briefly, offering a reserved smile before heading out. Eventually, the group paid the check, stepping into the balmy night. Sabrina walked Scarlett to Jeff's car, arms folded against the light wind. "I'm glad you could come," she said. "You seem lighter." Scarlett exhaled. "Being with all of you, just laughing, it's nice. I haven't done that in a while." Sabrina gave a knowing nod. "Take these moments when you can. Life's about to change for you." Scarlett paused, keying in on Sabrina's words. "You think so?" "Oh, definitely," Sabrina replied. "You've let Lorenzo into Lily's life, and in doing so, you've opened a door to a whole new future, possibly one you never envisioned. Remember to prioritize what you and Lily need, not just what everyone else expects." On the drive home, Scarlett gazed out the window at passing streetlights, her mind drifting between thoughts of Lily's bright face and the uncertain swirl of her future with Lorenzo. Despite the swirling doubts, she felt a renewed glimmer of courage. She'd found moments of joy tonight, fleeting yet powerful. Maybe that was a sign she could handle whatever came next. Once at her apartment, Scarlett thanked Jeff and climbed the stairs quietly, careful not to wake Lily or the neighbors. Inside, she slipped off her shoes, noticing Lily's drawings taped to the fridge. Crayon depictions of a family with tall, dark-haired Lorenzo, Lily in pigtails, and Scarlett in her work apron. At the edge of each picture, Lily had scribbled flowers, hearts, and bright suns. Scarlett smiled softly, remembering Sabrina's words. Life's about to change. She stood in the dimly lit kitchen, letting the hush of the night wrap around her. Rather than fear, she felt a cautious anticipation. She'd found laughter and companionship outside her usual anxieties, proof that her world could expand if she let it. She tiptoed into Lily's bedroom to check on her sleeping daughter, feeling a sense of fragile peace settle in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she believed that a better life, one with room for growth, love, and even a bit of unexpected adventure, might truly be possible. Scarlett woke to the ring of her phone early on a Saturday morning. Disoriented, she fumbled for it on the nightstand, worried it might be an emergency. Instead, she heard Lorenzo's voice, calm yet carrying an excited edge. "Good morning," he said, a hint of warmth in his tone. "I'm at the airport in Phoenix." "I took an earlier flight than planned. Couldn't wait to see Lily." Scarlett sat up in bed, her pulse quickening. "You're back already? That's great. When did you land?" "Just now. I was thinking I could come by in a couple of hours if that's all right." She glanced at the clock. It was barely 7 a.m. Lily was usually up by now, bounding around the living room. "Give me some time to get sorted," she replied. "Come by at 9. "Perfect. See you soon." Scarlett ended the call, heart racing. She slipped out of bed, throwing on a robe as she tiptoed into the hallway. Lily was indeed awake, sprawled on the living room rug, watching cartoons. "Guess who's in town?" Scarlett said, ruffling Lily's hair. Lily looked up with bright eyes. "Daddy!" Scarlett nodded, amused at how Lily's face lit with excitement. "He'll be here soon. Let's get you dressed and maybe we can all have breakfast together." An hour and a half later, Scarlett had tidied up the small apartment as best she could, stacked her nursing textbooks out of sight, and set the table with fresh bagels and fruit. She barely had time to smooth her hair when a soft knock sounded at the door. Lily sprinted ahead of her mother. Scarlett opened the door to find Lorenzo on the threshold, looking slightly travel-worn, but wearing a broad smile. A carry-on bag rested at his feet. Lily immediately leapt up to hug him around the waist. After a warm greeting, Scarlett stepped aside to let him in. He glanced around, taking in the modest living room, the worn couch, and the array of Lily's drawings pinned to the walls. Though he'd been here briefly before, it felt more personal this time, more real. "I brought a small souvenir from New York," Lorenzo said, rummaging in his bag. He extracted a stuffed Statue of Liberty figurine, handing it to Lily. The child's face lit up, and she squeezed the toy in delight. Over breakfast, Lily peppered him with questions. "Did you see Central Park? Are the buildings really tall? Did you go to the top of one?" Lorenzo answered with enthusiasm, describing the bustling cityscape. Scarlett watched them, torn between contentment and a faint pang of envy. She'd never been to New York. Her dream vacations had always been postponed by bills and responsibilities. After they finished eating, Lily scampered to her bedroom to change into play clothes. Lorenzo helped Scarlett clear dishes, glancing around with a thoughtful expression. "You've made this place feel like a real home," he said softly. Scarlett shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "It's small, but it's ours." He paused, setting a plate in the drying rack. "I was thinking I might start looking at properties here in Phoenix, a place of my own, closer to you and Lily." She turned to him, surprise in her eyes. "Really, really," he confirmed. "I don't want Lily to feel like I'm just a visitor who drops in. If I'm going to be her father, I should be rooted here." A mix of gratitude and caution coursed through her. That would be a big step. "What about your expansions? You're traveling," he sighed, leaning against the counter. "I'll still travel sometimes, but I can base my operations here, and with the right team, I don't have to be on the road constantly." Scarlett nodded, wiping her hands on a dish towel. A flicker of doubt nagged at her. What if Gianna intervened, or if public scrutiny grew? But for now, it felt like a moment of possibility, something they might build on. Later, they took Lily to a nearby playground. While Lily made fast friends with a group of neighborhood kids, Scarlett and Lorenzo sat on a bench, discussing the next steps. She confided her worries about Gianna's reaction, about the potential media interest once Lorenzo fully acknowledged Lily in a press release. Lorenzo listened, his gaze steady. "We'll handle it together," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'm meeting with my PR team next week. I'll make it clear that Lily's well-being is priority. If the media comes knocking, we'll lay down boundaries." Scarlett wrapped her arms around herself, feeling a subtle breeze rustle the trees overhead. I've gotten used to protecting Lily by myself. Sharing that responsibility is new territory, but thank you." He gave a small smile, glancing at Lily perched on the highest rung of the monkey bars. "I'm the one who owes gratitude. If you'd never agreed to see me again, I'd have missed out on her entire childhood." A sense of understanding settled between them. No matter how complex the path ahead might be, they were forging something resembling a family. They watched Lily leap down from the bars, giggling as she ran across the playground, unstoppable in her youthful energy. Scarlett felt as though a bright lens had been placed over her life, illuminating corners she'd kept in shadow. The world might still be unpredictable, but at least now she had company on the journey, people who cared, believed in her, and were ready to face the unknown by her side. Scarlett tapped her pencil on the edge of the table in the Sunset Bistro's small break room, reviewing flashcards for an upcoming nursing exam. She had 2 more weeks until finals, and every spare moment she could grab at work went into cramming medical terms into her brain. Sabrina stepped in, carrying a tray of cut vegetables. "Got a free minute?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. "I could use your help in the kitchen if you're not swamped." Scarlett nodded, tucking her flashcards away. "Sure, I could use a break from memorizing disease classifications." She followed Sabrina to the kitchen, where chopped onions and peppers spilled across a cutting board. "Slice these," Sabrina instructed, handing Scarlett a knife. "Also, congrats on the new normal. I noticed Lily's been mentioning her dad a lot more, like it's no big deal." Scarlett smiled, carefully slicing through a pepper. "I guess that's how it should be, no big deal, just part of life." He's taking her to a children's museum this weekend. She's over the moon. Sabrina's eyes glowed with approval. "And how do you feel about it?" Pausing, Scarlett wiped her hands on her apron. "I'm relieved, mostly. Nervous, too. But Lily's so happy, and Lorenzo's really trying. Sometimes I can't believe how far we've come in such a short time." Sabrina nodded, tossing some chopped vegetables into a sizzling pan. "It's good to see you letting others in. You remember how reserved you were when we first met?" Scarlett let out a soft laugh. "I was terrified, didn't trust anyone, convinced I had to do everything alone." A commotion sounded in the dining room, someone dropping a tray of glasses. Sabrina sighed. "Better see if Jeff needs help." She handed the spatula to Scarlett. "Stir this for a minute while I check." As Sabrina disappeared, Scarlett stirred the vegetables, a medley of colors and aromas rising from the pan. She recalled how she used to envy those with an easy smile or a steady network of friends. Over time, she'd found both at the bistro, a place that was once just a job but had become a community. By the time Sabrina returned, the dish was nearly done. "Crisis averted," she announced. "It was just a few water glasses." She nudged Scarlett aside gently, taking over the stove. "You ever think about how many people you've influenced here, even if you didn't realize it?" Scarlett frowned, setting the spatula down. "Influenced? Me?" Sabrina nodded, not looking away from the pan. "Jeff told me he admires how you balance motherhood and nursing school. Thomas said you're the most reliable server he's got. And me, well, seeing you fight for Lily has reminded me why I kept going when I was a single mom." A wave of warmth spread through Scarlett's chest. She felt oddly flattered and somewhat disbelieving. "I never meant to inspire anyone. I'm just doing what needs to be done." Sabrina turned off the burner. "That's what makes it inspiring. You didn't wait for permission or applause. You just did it. And in doing so, you showed the rest of us it's possible." Scarlett rubbed the back of her neck, uncomfortable with the praise but also touched. She gazed around the kitchen, a once foreign place where she'd felt so out of sorts. Now it felt like a second home. Later, as she finished her shift, Scarlett found Thomas in a rare moment of calm by the hostess stand. He glanced up from his paperwork, "Everything okay tonight?" he asked in his usual clipped manner, but there was a softer edge to his tone. "All good," Scarlett replied, handing him a receipt. "Just finished table 12. He nodded, then cleared his throat. "I've been meaning to say, you've had a tough few months, but you've handled it. The bistro appreciates that." Surprise jolted through Scarlett. Thomas rarely acknowledged personal matters. She gave a shy smile. "Thank you. I'm grateful for this job, for the support. It means a lot." He only nodded again and returned to his paperwork, but Scarlett sensed the unspoken respect. Gathering her things, she headed out to pick up Lily, her heart a little lighter. She realized that by sharing her struggles and her triumphs, she'd inadvertently become a source of lessons learned for those around her. It wasn't a role she'd asked for, but it felt right. On the way home, Lily chattered about a new friend she'd made at school. Scarlett listened with genuine interest, now able to give her daughter undivided attention without the constant weight of secrecy about her father. With Lorenzo, a more visible figure in their lives, everything felt open and more honest, like stepping onto a solid bridge between the past and the future. She unlocked the apartment door, ushering Lily inside. The warm glow of a nearby lamp illuminated the small living room. As she closed the door behind them, she remembered Sabrina's words. Sometimes, simply doing what needs to be done can show others what's possible. Scarlett resolved to keep pushing forward, never underestimating the power of her example, even if it wasn't perfect. After all, she and Lily were living proof that obstacles could be overcome, one determined step at a time. Scarlett woke to the pleasant aroma of pancakes, an unfamiliar smell in her modest kitchen on a quiet Sunday morning. She eased out of bed and followed the scent, finding Lorenzo by the stove, sleeves rolled up, flipping golden-brown pancakes on her old skillet. Lily bounced around, handing him chocolate chips to sprinkle on top. The scene momentarily stole Scarlett's breath. She couldn't recall the last time anyone else had cooked breakfast in her home. The sight of Lily giggling with Lorenzo in a playful, relaxed way felt like a dream she'd never dared to have. "Morning," Lorenzo said, turning to offer a warm smile. "We decided to let you sleep in a bit." Scarlett ran a hand through her messy hair. "You didn't have to do all this." Lorenzo shrugged lightly. "I wanted to. Lily insisted on chocolate chips." The child grinned, wiggling her eyebrows. "Chocolate for breakfast is the best." They ate together at the small kitchen table, the three of them squeezed into the limited space. Scarlett savored every bite, laughing as Lily got chocolate smudges on her face. A fleeting thought crossed her mind. So this is what it's like to have a partner around, to share everyday tasks and small joys. After breakfast, Scarlett cleared the plates, insisting that Lorenzo relax, but he wouldn't hear of it. Together, they did the dishes while Lily sat on the living room floor, doodling another one of her family drawings. Once the kitchen was tidy, Lorenzo leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I have a meeting with my PR team tomorrow. I plan to finalize the statement about Lily." Scarlett set down a dish towel, swallowing a spike of nerves. "It's going to happen. Then, people will know." He nodded, features earnest. "The world will know I have a daughter. I won't share intimate details, but I'll acknowledge her openly. No more secrets." A quiet ripple of relief and fear rolled through Scarlett. She pictured paparazzi or local media frenzy, yet the alternative, hiding Lily away, was far worse. "Okay," she said softly, coming to stand closer to him. "We'll handle it. One step at a time." That afternoon, they decided to visit the local farmers market, an outing Lily had often asked for, but Scarlett never had time to manage alone. Wandering between stalls of fresh produce and handmade crafts, Scarlett felt a sense of ordinary magic. Lily clutched a small basket for apples, pointing out every interesting vegetable she saw. Neighbors and fellow shoppers greeted them politely, most unaware of Lorenzo's celebrity in the tech world. For once, they felt like any other family enjoying a sunny day out. Scarlett breathed in the scent of ripe peaches, letting a calm contentment wash over her. Halfway through the market, they ran into Sabrina, who was scanning rows of artisanal bread. She greeted Lily with a high five, then smiled at Lorenzo. "It's good to see you out and about together," she remarked. "Makes me happy," Scarlett replied. "We're enjoying some normalcy before everything goes public." Sabrina's gaze softened. "However crazy it gets, remember we're here for you, all of us at the bistro." After chatting briefly, they parted ways. Lorenzo took Lily's hand, guiding her toward a stall offering fresh lemonade. Scarlett lingered a moment, observing them from a short distance. The man, who had once been nothing more than a bittersweet memory of her college days, now stood by Lily's side, earnestly showing her how to count change. In that moment, a flood of gratitude and wonder rose in Scarlett's chest. For a long time, she'd been weighed down by a single narrative, a young woman, abandoned with a child. Now, she was rewriting that story. She felt a renewed sense of ownership over her own life, discovering that she could blend independence with partnership, forging a path that benefited both Lily and herself. Toward evening, they returned to Scarlett's apartment. Lorenzo helped Lily set up a small puzzle on the coffee table, then stood near the window as dusk settled outside. Scarlett joined him, arms folded, peering at the sunset painting the sky in pink and orange hues. He glanced down, voice hushed. "I know there's still so much to figure out, where I'll live long-term, how we'll handle all the public attention, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere." Scarlett took a steady breath, meeting his gaze. "I believe you." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I'm still scared sometimes, scared of being let down or exposing Lily to too much. But seeing you two together, it's worth the risk." He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I promise I'll do everything I can to keep Lily safe and happy, and you too." They stood there, silent for a beat, the weight of their shared experiences lingering in the warm air. Lily's soft giggles floated from the living room, the puzzle pieces clinking together. Scarlett's let herself rest against Lorenzo's shoulder, allowing the closeness to calm her. When they turned away from the window, Lily was eagerly motioning them over to help with the final pieces of the puzzle. Scarlett stepped forward, heart full, aware that their journey was far from over, yet in that simple moment, surrounded by ordinary tasks and promises of togetherness, she felt a quiet, profound sense of peace. She realized she had come a long way from the lonely nights of waitressing and studying, always looking over her shoulder in fear. Now, each step felt grounded in the present, her love for Lily guiding the way, and in that gentle truth she found the courage to embrace whatever the next sunrise might bring. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.